Baby, don't check for me. Taking time out to be and live my life off screen. Taking time out to be and live my life. Hey. Taking just don't be and live my life. Don't take it personal. We just building. It's my season, lay foundation. Make a name for generations, please, and make a then take a break or a little vacation and chasing blues away. Hey, hey. You always posting up pictures, trying to look like you winning or look like you always be working. Soaking the moments you live in, yeah. You got the nerve to be on me, faking your life for the IG. If you got my number, don't add me, 'cause baby, I'm on hiatus. I'm on hiatus. I'm on hiatus. I'm on hiatus. Baby, don't check for me. Taking time out to be and live my life off screen. Taking time out to be and live my life. I'm in a place serene and pure and free. Hey, I ain't worried about what's the wave, only worry about me, yeah. Oh, I'm taking time out to be and live my life off screen. Taking time out to
Let me go for one day. Let me lose myself again. Give me something for the pain. Always trying to pretend that I'm not living just a lie. Broken heart and shattered lives. Let me go for one day. Let me lose myself. Oh, I knew how this would end. Oh, I knew that it would die, that we would come to this, that we would say goodbye. Someone help me see it. Someone help me free this feeling. Someone help me see it. Someone help me free this feeling. Don't wanna think about the past. I'm crying out behind a mask. So give me something for the pain. I wanna lose myself again. Please get out of my mind. Just get out of my sight. Let me go for one day. Let me lose myself. Oh, I knew how this would end. Oh, I knew that it would die, that we would come to this, that we would say goodbye. Someone help me see. Someone help me
ask you is, I don't wanna push you farther away, no, I don't wanna play no games. I just wanna call, see if we're okay, babe. All I wanna ask you is, are you down for love? Are you up for someone to be together, be together? Babe, I want your love. I'll be the one you trust. You're all that matters, all that matters. Are you down for love? Are you up for someone to be together, be I wanna be Babe, I want your love, your love. I'll be the one you trust. You're all that matters.
No matter what we go through, love will still remain. So do what you want, baby. You and me in the sun. Know that I still be here when the day is done. So come a little bit closer, and I'll tell you what I feel inside. You know I'm gonna wait on you. I'm gonna wait on you. You know I'm gonna wait on you. Yes, I'm gonna wait on you. No one's gonna love you like I do. So glad that I found you. You're the missing piece, the last piece of the puzzle. I'm finally at ease. So when times are rough and the promises we make just seem so hollow and weak, and we're about to break, we have to remind ourselves, 'cause we know how we feel inside. You know I'm gonna wait on you. Ain't over till it's over. I'm gonna wait on you. I'm gonna love it till it's gone. You know I'm gonna wait on you. And the weight that's on your shoulder, I'm gonna carry that for you. So hear me when I say, no one's gonna love you like I do. I'm gonna wait on you. I'm gonna wait on you. I'm gonna wait on you. You know I'm gonna wait on you. And the weight that's on your shoulder, yes, I'm gonna carry that for you. So hear me when I say, no one's gonna love you like I do.
Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
You'll never feel the way I feel. You don't know if my love is real. Baby, listen to me, here's the deal. When you're not here, I'm not the same. I'm needing a new chapter, babe. Been stuck here in a bed for days. I've been staring at the telephone, cause when you're gone, I miss your face. 8:00, body talk. There's no need to bring it up. Nothing you say makes it better. Wrecking ball, tear apart. Issues left behind, restart. Nothing you say makes it better. Hey, bring it right back to me, baby. No, we've been here before. Give me the real this time. No cap, no lies. It's our encore. Bring it right back to me, baby. I know my heart wants more. Give me the good this time. No cap, no lies. It's our encore.
Is this what you want now? Feels like you're looking for something better. Is this what you want now? Or is it because you can't forget her? I can't keep pretending it's not getting to me. It's never ending. Can't give you what you need. You're misbehaving. Yeah, it's getting to me. It's never ending. You can give anything, so you can go, go, go. Go, 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 go. Yeah, so I can focus. I just need to focus on myself. Yeah, you better go, go, go. Go, 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 go. So I can focus. I just need to focus on myself. This is what I want now. And yeah, I'm waiting for something better. Yeah. This is what I want now. No, I won't settle for anything else. I can't keep pretending it's not getting to me. It's never ending. Can't give you what you need. Oh no, no. You're misbehaving. Yeah, it's getting to me. It's never ending. You can give anything, so you can go, go, go. Go, 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 go. Yeah, so I can focus. I just need to focus on myself. Oh, you
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
I am independent journalist Georgia Ford. We start today's show with an exclusive story coverage by Benjamin Dixon. As he was on the road traveling, he had the opportunity to stop and speak with truck drivers who work for Amazon. Now, we are probably, most of us, informed about their poor working conditions across the country. This is a company that has 1.2 million employees, 110 warehouses in the U.S., more than 185 globally, a huge employer. Yet they continue to fail at providing safe and healthy working conditions for those who are working for them. Take a look at this video.
Had to spill out the truck. We're gonna leave it. Well, you know what? That means another worker has to get it. So I'm gonna let you come pick it up. Tell me what this is.
Bottle of urine.
Whose urine is
my
it?
urine.
Why do you have a bottle of urine, brother?
Because I don't have the time to stop. So I have to keep up, and I don't have places around me where all my deliveries are. So I have to keep a bottle for whenever I have to use the restroom.
That make you feel, man, that you have to do that, like as a human being. I mean.
Captured by Ben Dixon, who's joining us now along with Brother Carl Mack. You guys, when you look at an employer this size, it's not a matter of whether or not they have the money to create more equitable and healthy work environments. This is a choice that they're making. And Ben, I know that you pointed this out online. These allegations are not necessarily new allegations, but allegations that should remain at the forefront of people's minds.
Right, absolutely, Georgia. Good morning, Dr. Mack. The story, the reason I knew I could get the story was because I've read the story. But there's a difference, I think, in reading and seeing. And then the amount of drivers that had pee bottles, we thought it was anecdotal. We thought maybe it was a one-off. I talked to 8 drivers. 7 of the 8 drivers had either had pee bottles on them, urine bottles on them, or knew or had done it. There was only one driver out of the 8 that had no idea whatsoever what I was talking about, and he just so happened to be a white man.
So, Georgia, I would say that, when we think about why this condition exists, I think it's pretty clear that the U.S., in America, we want to say we care about culture. But in fact, what we're saying is we really care as consumers about trying to get that product as quickly as we can, and as importantly, as cheaply as we can. And so when you factor those two things in, time and cost, you will have conditions like this, because if they're working off efficiency, it's about you moving and running and getting those packages in and out to the consumer as quickly as possible. And so because this is not a new story, to Ben's point, and folks have not just absolutely rattled the alarm bell, is because in the end, what the consumer is saying, look, I feel bad about it, but get me my product and get it to me as quickly as you can, as cheaply as you can.
And Ben, I'd love for you to elaborate a little bit more on how you were able to connect with these drivers, because this is not necessarily something I would think that people would really be proud to talk about. It feels a little humiliating. It feels a little embarrassing to have to talk about something so personal and to share on camera, even, the conditions that you've been positioned to deal with just because you need to provide for your family.
Absolutely, Georgia. There was a part of the clip where because I have tons of footage and audio and interviews. We've only shared a portion of it so far. And one of the videos, part of the video that we stopped at as we were watching it just a moment ago, was a young man who was talking about how he just felt like his voice didn't matter. What he had to say didn't matter. And I found that most of them were really nervous and embarrassed to even know that I knew about the urine bottles. They honestly, they looked at me like, oh my goodness, how does he know about my shame? Well, we know about the shame, quote unquote shame, because we covered the news and we read the articles. But there's such a disconnect between what we do in politics and in media and what is actually happening in the real world that they were surprised that anybody even knew. But yeah, we knew about this months ago, but did anybody do anything about it? And now I think we have a really easy way to do something about it by everyone politely and kindly and thoughtfully and with empathy ask your drivers to show you their pee bottles, their urine bottles, so we can expose it.
And Ben, I think the other thing that we have to keep in mind is, nobody wants to work in a condition like that. And here is what, typically somebody is looking at. The American minimum wage is $7.25 an hour or abouts. And now if you go to Amazon and it's like, wow, I got a chance to make $18+ an hour. So Amazon is in effect pushing this, they're pushing this condition like, look at what you are working to. And so to the point of where we should all be absolutely concerned about it, because what Amazon is most concerned about is this capitalistic society and what they can do for their shareholders, of which I was one at one time. I've certainly invested in Amazon. And as of Friday, when the stock market closed, one share of Amazon would run you $3,344.94 for one share of Amazon. And that stock is looking to go up. So this is part of what happens. And then if too many people complain about it, now I guarantee you, Ben, that if you take a look at the turnover rate of workers inside of Amazon, now, any organization can talk about the churn of its employees, the turnover rate of its employees. I would dare say that Amazon would probably have one of the highest turnover rates of anybody. I wouldn't be surprised if it was north of literally 100%. So as long as you got that turnover rate continuously happening, you cannot have a group of people who are going to galvanize and say, let's address this, because now you got a whole set of new people coming in who once said, right, shit, I was making $7.25 an hour. Now I'm making $18+ an hour. Things are good. Well, they're good until you begin to understand the deplorable work conditions that one is subjected to, similar to this, this shocking piece of footage that you just gone out there to share with us.
And I love the way you frame that, Brother Mac. And if I had to just give it a name, I'm going to call it the new boyfriend phenomenon, because they really do get away with a lot in those. And our new girlfriend, I don't care. The new relationship phenomenon is something that Amazon and a lot of businesses are able to get away with, because they know there's going to always be a new pool of labor who's excited about that new relationship until they realize how much they've been gaslit.
Right.
Well, and I think that's why it's so important at some point that a union is formed. I mean, we've seen this type of exploitation with other employers in the past, and usually the conditions aren't mitigated until a union is formed and you have the collective body of people in conjunction with other outside entities that can actively advocate for better conditions, better pay. And to me, I mean, when you talk about just the ability to use the bathroom, we're not in a third world country. And even if we were, we should still be actually advocating for just the basic human right of being able to access a restroom so that you can relieve yourself. I want to take a look back at this exclusive footage captured by Ben Dixon while he was on the road. I know we saw just a short clip there, 30 seconds, but there's more. Take a look at this.
Where all my deliveries are, so I have to keep a bottle whenever I have to use the restroom.
That make you feel, man, that you have to do that, like as a human being.
I mean, how the world is going, I do what I gotta do to maintain me and mine. That's pretty much it, I can't complain too much about it, because to me, my voice don't even matter that much,
About it.
Do you have a bottle in the van?
I mean, yeah, but usually I throw them out.
You've had to pee in your truck before?
Yes.
Why?
Because most of the areas we deliver in, they don't have any bathrooms around there, and not a lot of people want to stop, and take time out of their route and get behind just to go pee. This is actually the second Amazon team I've worked for, and I've always done it.
And you've had to do it with both teams. Is it 2 different states or the same state?
Same state, 2 different warehouses.
2 different warehouses, same conditions. So you figure we'll see this across the country.
Yep.
This is the beginning of the day, and I'm not going to hold you up. Show us what you normally have to pee in. So when you're done eating, you pee in that.
Yep.
Right. It's more difficult. It's difficult. How does that make you feel as a human?
It made me feel away because for men it's easy. They can just pull up on the side of the road, whip it out, and pee. But women have to squat. So of course I'm gonna do it in my van.
Do you know about the organizing in Bessemer, Alabama?
Is that a part of Amazonians? Yeah.
Yes,
so
yes, it is.
I'm fully familiar with it.
Yeah. So you would think that workers who have to pee in a bottle would want to unionize.
We don't get that, so we're still dealing with the same things we've been dealing with. That's why I'm still holding this bottle of pee in my hand right now.
Ben, I know you asked him there about forming a union. And Brother Mac, feel free to chime in on this as well. What is it going to take? They have 1.2 million employees nationwide. What is it going to take for them to be able to successfully form a union so that they don't have to keep peeing in bottles?
Yeah, I would like to reverse that question just a little bit and say, how is it that Amazon was able to keep without having unions to the tune of 1.2 million employees? Like, how do you get that big without having major unions as a part of your workforce? And that's because Amazon has enough resources to stop unions. They actively participated in stopping the organizing efforts in Bessemer, Alabama, over the past year, where Black women were organizing to help the warehouse workers there to protect them from COVID-19 as well as better working conditions. But Amazon has enough attorneys and enough money to be able to buy a union-free existence.
But Ben, the other part about it is, again, that churn rate. That is absolutely important because, try to imagine that you have a group of employees who are concerned enough about this to do it. But when you realize that you're fighting such a juggernaut with such resources and you've been in those conditions for long enough and you just finally decide, check it out, I'm going to find a new job. So when the next group of employees come in there, they're not coming in there with that same fight, that same fervor to now look at trying to bring a union. But Ben, I do want to say this as well. You said at the early part of the show, it's one thing to read about it. It's quite another to actually see it. And I got to tell you, nothing can be more sobering because to look at the video, to listen to them tell that story and to know that these are the work conditions that they're working on, and then juxtapose that thought to the man who founded Amazon. Yeah. And now just as a sidekick, I think I'll just take a trip into outer space at the expense of these types of working conditions. And unbelievable. And heaven forbid, don't even get me to talking about whether or not Amazon cares about climate change with electric trucks. Yeah. Don't talk to me about climate change when you do not even care about the very people who work for their organization. Unbelievable.
That's right. And Georgia, real quick, I want to give a shout out to brother Christian Smalls. He's the Black brother who started organizing some Amazon workers, I believe, in a New York facility, trying to protect them from COVID-19. He got targeted by that media machine, by that PR attorney machine that is Amazon. And I've been working with him. I've been coordinating with him because I want to make sure that no matter what I'm out here doing, I'm out here just following my gut, following my instinct. But they are actually doing the organizing and the planning. So I've been able to coordinate with him to make sure that what we put out protects the workers exactly the way they need to be protected. And then I'm hoping we can get him to come on later on this week to speak with you or any of the hosts about the ongoing existing organizing efforts of Amazon workers.
And so, Ben, if you don't mind, the brother that you just cited, is he still an employee of Amazon? Because clearly one of the things we do know is that when you do have employees who speak out, they become a target. So is he still working at Amazon, and how is he surviving
They targeted him well. He's no longer with Amazon, and he's surviving off of a GoFundMe. We've been able to. He started the GoFundMe, and they were pretty successful. And then a couple of us influencers got a hold of it, and we've been able to just share it and make sure that he's sustained.
Wow.
Well, and, Brother Mac, you talked about how sobering it is to actually see the video, even though we've heard the reports, to actually see the video of it. I don't know about you guys. I have a pretty sensitive intake for some of this stuff. And so when I keep seeing that bottle of urine fall out the truck, it turns my stomach, and it just kind of feel that feeling like I'm about to throw up, because it's nasty, it's disgusting, it's unsanitary. Yeah. And Ben, I heard you in the video say there, I'm not picking it up, and you shouldn't have to, and really neither should they, and you look at Jeff Bezos and what he's able to do on the profits. It is just so unfortunate that you have this level of greed and capitalism that continues to fuel these working conditions for 1.2 million people. I think that we are just scratching the surface, and Ben, I'd really like to applaud you for your courage in stepping up and getting the footage that you've gotten on this story, this exclusive footage. But I feel like we're just scratching the surface. It would be interesting to get a larger pool, and I'd like to do a call out. If you know someone who works at Amazon, inbox us. We'll definitely keep your identity anonymous, but we would really, really love to hear what your experiences have been. As you see, we've blurred out the faces, the people in the video that we're showing here to protect their identity and their livelihood, so your identity will not be released. But it is very important, if you have people who work there, if you've worked there yourself. I actually had a cousin who I'm going to reach out to, who sustained an injury, and I thought maybe it was just an isolated incident, but I'm curious to know exactly what conditions were put in place so that he wouldn't be injured now, seeing these working conditions for employees, because at the end of the day, when you're looking at your employees and you're telling them that they have to deliver a package every 3 minutes, there's absolutely no way that a driver can be successful in that many deliveries while also factoring in a restroom break. It's just not feasible.
Yeah. George, let me see this, Ben. I am literally sitting here having just a very serious moment, to the point that, clearly I survived in my retirement off of my investments, and Amazon has been a very good stock for folks to come into. I'm trying to ask myself right now, Carl, how could you invest in that company understanding these conditions? And so when we talk about Jeff Bezos, I need for folks to understand this capitalistic society. This man has a net worth of $193 billion. Now, we almost become kind of glazed over about $1 billion. I need you to understand what $1 billion is in simple terms. $1 billion means that you can spend $1 million for 1,000 years. $1 million for 1,000 years. And this man has 193 of those. He will not, nobody with the name Bezos ever in his lineage will ever have to work. But so these two things are resonating with me. This is the capitalistic society we live in. And then now personally, first of all, I too want to applaud you for such sobering, such video, such work, to the point that for me, I don't know how I could ever invest in Amazon, understanding that. And I'm not simply questioning it. I just know deep in my soul right now, it's going to have to be some very desperate conditions for me to even want to invest in Amazon, knowing that these types of work conditions are what these workers are exposed to. And my heart goes out to the brother who you knew. So when you kept talking about how could they have so many employees and not have a union, because they effectively do this. This is reminiscence of the tobacco industry. The tobacco industry knew that they could never afford to lose a case, and if they did, it would come apart. This is what Amazon does. Anybody who speaks out, they must go after them with everything they got to shut them down. And then a message is sent to everybody else. If you want to lose this job that is paying you twice plus the American minimum wage, be quiet, shut it up, shut it down. So,
Brother Mac, I thank you for that, because I feel in there the spirit of BDS, boycott, divest, and sanction the hell out of Amazon until such time that they can do something simple, like put a porta potty with the Amazon access card on the side of the road. There are simple solutions to this. And matter of fact, most of the drivers have solutions for this problem. So I don't think that this is an existential threat for Amazon, nor should it be. But if they don't pay attention to this detail, then I think a campaign of boycotting and divesting from Amazon will be appropriate.
Well, I can't speak for... Go ahead, George. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I was just going to say, it makes me wonder, where's OSHA on this, the Department of Labor? It just feels like there should be some type of federal intervention when these reports and accusations started coming out at the beginning of the year. And so I also want to know, where's our federal government on intervening on this huge corporation that has these poor working conditions? Because I feel like if a mom and pop shop had one report of misconduct like this, they would be shut down. And so it's important as we continue to look at the collective power that some of these corporations have to override basic employment laws. This is, it would be interesting to get a labor lawyer, employment lawyer on the line to find out what laws are being broken here. Is this legal? Because it doesn't feel like these types of working conditions meet OSHA standards. So where's the federal enforcement? Where's the federal enforcement? Why is there no intervention? And if we can't get federal intervention on this, then absolutely, I think when people, especially allies who say, I don't know what to do. I just, I'm just a school teacher. I'm just a banker. I'm just a nurse. I don't know how I can help. Well, we just heard from 3 or 4 Black Amazon employees. How you can help is either divest and make a stance with your money, put your money where your mouth is, or get on the phone and start calling the governor or the mayors where these warehouses are located. That's right. Or calling OSHA, calling the U.S. Department of Labor, submitting complaints, because no one in America, especially for a company whose CEO has that much retained profit, should be subjected to these types of working conditions.
Okay, Georgia, you've done it.
That's what I thought. That's what I just thought. Yeah, go ahead, bro, Mac.
Okay, Georgia, let me just say this. I promise everybody within the sound of my voice, I shall never, ever buy another share of Amazon stock. That's how compelling what I just heard. Between you and that footage man, I'm saying right now, my effort on the divestment side of it, I shall never, ever buy another share of Amazon stock, ever. And I'm saying that from a person who has invested almost 7 figures into Amazon before. So shall not.
Well, let me say this to the audience, because here's the dilemma. I'm only one man, and we have a great platform here, and this is amazing coverage, but we're not only fighting against the greed of capitalism, we're also fighting against this algorithm. We have to break through the algorithm. So I need every single person under the sound of my voice. This is what you can do to help. Ask your Amazon driver to show you their pee bottle. I want you to take a picture of it, and I want you to post it online. And then I want you to use a hashtag Amazon abuse. It's a statement first. Stop the hashtag Amazon abuse. If we get about 500 people posting pictures, and I know we could do that much. I may not have some of these other audiences' sizes to just do it with one tweet. We can do it together. If you get the word out, we can change. This is one thing we can change. Because let me tell you, I was driving from Cleveland, And let me tell you, when I pulled over and you run into those bushes, you don't care where you go when you got to go on the side of the road, right? Can you imagine how good it would be for those drivers to be able to use the bathroom? I think we could fix that.
But Ben, think about this. Let's just think for 1 second that if you needed to put, since you gave the example of a porta potty, just imagine if you had to put porta potties across any area where you got large Amazon deliveries. This man has $193 billion. 193. He doesn't. I mean, the thought of it is just sickening. It is absolutely sickening. But the other thing I would say is that, family, listen, if you are to take a picture of the pee bottles, please keep in mind to do everything in your power to make sure that you protect the anonymity of these workers.
Yes, please. And actually, Brother Mac, thank you for saying that. Let me take that back. Don't put out a single photo of anybody. Send them to us we took, me and my wild ass neighbor Jimmy, when I got back in town with these photos, he insisted that he check and double check and triple check because I was telling him about it. And he's a working class dude. And he was like, Ben, you just got to make sure you protect everybody. So send the pictures to us. Send it to me. bpd@progressivearmy.com. Send the photos to me first, and I will make sure that we painstakingly blur out everything. That way we can protect those workers. Thank you, Brother Mac.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, as we close here, for those of you who are just joining us and you may have missed the clips there that we played, we're going to go ahead and end today's segment with the video. If we can just roll that video again. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys are asking your Amazon drivers for those photos, sending them in, and we appreciate you. I'll see you tomorrow.
Just fell out the truck. We're going to leave it. Well, you know what? That means another worker has to get it. So I'm going to let you come pick it up. Tell me what this is.
Bottle of urine.
Whose urine is it?
My urine.
Why do you have a bottle of urine, brother?
Because I don't have the time to stop. So I have to keep and I don't have places around me where all my deliveries are. So I have to keep a bottle for whenever I have to use the restroom.
That make you feel, man, that you have to do that, like as a human being. I mean,
how the world is going, I do what I gotta do to maintain me and mine. That's pretty much it. I can't complain too much about it because to me, my voice don't even matter.
I'm in sync with the earth. 10 toes deep, flower child from the turf. I never switch sides, like even when I die, I'ma ride for the squad, light up tires in a hearse. I've been on a vibe, kinda hard to describe. I'm in between, I'm good and it's fine, but I'm tired of the grind. Then I come alive in the night to realize I'm in the middle of the time of my life. I'm never so packed for the stack, never lied on the rap. Got a bag from the way that I write it. Queen looking Tyson, threw that ass survive, doing 80 to the house. Then I hit her to the sky, changed haters on a tirade. Talking to their grip in the face, be still, let that hate stuff fade. We all want the same, we all want a meal in the safe. I wanna live like I'm trying to reach enlightenment. Trail spill from my lips, feel big from the bib. Take a sip till I pass out. Try and get grit, but it don't make sense. Cause you can lose life on this fast route. Yeah, turn thoughts to a cash cow. I might flip that to the glass house. I don't need the accolades, I'm in love with the chase. I just wanna eat, save a spot at the table. Beats with the slap, pin myself on the map. You long with the wind, but we knowing that it's cap. 5-hour flights, couple nights at the flat. To be real, couldn't see me making moves while I'm at. I'm still on the grind, limit time when I chat. Burning down sage, keep the demons away. When I write it, give a piece of myself to the page. I don't do it for the praise, love, that's just how I'm made.
Truth in the glass in the mirror. Yeah. Do it at me, old man, tryna pass in the fear. You're the first one to talk, but the last one to hear. Eyes blurry, but I couldn't see that, and he cleared down. start to feel like I'm on one. Settle in, I'll be here for the long run. I'm a slave for the cash, got snakes in the grass, no brakes on the ad, but it's all fun. We done seen it all, heard enough, give me space before I murder y'all. 10 bad here, I'ma curve them all, 12 missed calls, and I still made a curtain call. Here to light it up, lighten up. Hear him talking, they ain't right enough, tighten up. Everything that I came for, I left with. I don't bang sets, I just bang on the set list. Going past supper when I came for the breakfast. Put me in your prayers, I might put you on the guest list. Young, tell me reckless. Gold in my soul, got the same on my necklace. Light it up, light it up.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
In March of 2020, Amazon fired Christian Smalls from his job at a fulfillment center in Staten Island after he helped organize a protest outside of his workplace. Smalls said that he did this to bring attention to unsafe working conditions at the start of this pandemic. Brother Smalls, Christian, how you doing, man? Thanks so much for joining me again.
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I wanted to bring you on. We spoke at the start of this pandemic, and at the start of this pandemic, you made a lot of waves. And in fact, you became a primary target of Amazon because of your union efforts, your unionizing efforts, but also just, pointing and highlighting the fact that the conditions of workers in Amazon warehouse were atrocious and literally led to people catching COVID-19 and even some deaths. Can you talk about what you were working on then and what you're working on now with regard to this this union effort?
Absolutely, yeah. Last year, as you remember, the height of the pandemic, New York City being the epicenter, I tried to be proactive instead of retroactive and protect my workers, employees that work underneath me in my department, in that entire facility from catching COVID-19. The company refused to listen. And as a result, 11 months later, you may have heard Letitia James has filed a lawsuit on my behalf. Over 250 of those associates at that facility have contracted the virus. And many of them came back to that facility within 7 days. So it just validates the fact that I was telling the truth the entire time. And, that somebody needs to be held accountable. So I'm glad that we're seeing that there's an investigation and also a lawsuit that's following up on that. So, where we at now, we're still trying to unionize. Alabama is the main focal point right now. I just came back from Alabama last week. And I think the media and everybody should be talking about that.
Absolutely. And speaking of Alabama, Bessemer, Alabama, Amazon workers are voting on whether or not to unionize. And on Tuesday, actor Danny Glover joined those workers in solidarity, where he was invited by a local news station. And this is what Danny Glover had to say about what's going on in Alabama at Amazon. We take a quick look at that. Yeah, here it comes.
Here to Birmingham. What brings you here?
Well, I'm here to support workers who are employed by Amazon, who have a very important vote at this particular moment, and that's to vote on whether they want to have a union. And I'm partial to that in the sense that I'm a big union supporter and certainly been a supporter and advocate for organized labor and unions since I was a child. My parents were union workers. My mother and father were at the United States Post Office all of their career, and each and every point of that, they were involved in the union as young adults until they retired.
Wow. So this is somewhat personal for you, I guess, with trying to convince people.
Well, I'm just trying to support them. I mean, it's certainly the fact that a union doesn't need me here to ordain or to champion its purpose. I've seen it work, as I said, in my own life, and seen it work as always around various other experiences I had, whether it's with hotel workers or laundry workers or clothing textile workers, or all those places where I've been able to support auto workers, support unions. And it's one of the very great privileges that I've had as someone who has gained this visibility by on stage and television and films, but at the same time have a chance to support ordinary people.
Christian, could you speak to the significance of what's happening in Alabama? Like you said, you were just there. Danny Glover was just there last night. It is a massive movement, and it's a movement against a tremendously, unimaginably powerful organization by the name of Amazon.
Absolutely. This is probably the most important union vote probably since the 1930s, since the Great Depression. There was an economic collapse then. Last year, we seen that with in 2020, and we're still living in this pandemic right now. And right now, we have an opportunity for the first time in American history to have an Amazon facility unionized. And I think it will galvanize the rest of the nation. I think this will be an uprising for all unions across the nation. So once again, I believe this is probably the most important union vote on the table since the 1930s. And I think it's really important. It's just, if it's successful, that we can also use this news to galvanize and organize facilities all across the nation, which I plan to do. So I'm hoping that I have good news once the union vote is closed.
I want to bring my co-host Rebecca Azor into the conversation because, as I look at what you're doing, man, and the fact that you personally have been a target of Amazon, right? The first thing they did was fire you. And then the next thing they did was a PR campaign against you. And you had to get help from the people. The people had to step in and speak to that real quick for me.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. A week after I was fired, Jeff Bezos and his top general counsel, tried to run a smear campaign, calling me not smart or articulate, and ironically, make me the whole face of the unionizing efforts. So, that's exactly what I did. I founded an organization. I traveled the country for the last 11 months with my organization, protesting at every single one of Jeff Bezos' mansions. And here we are. We're still fighting. And one thing I learned from Amazon, a principle was called see it, own it, and fix it. And I saw the issue last year, and I owned up to it. And I hopefully, when it's all said and done, I fix some type of issues that we had with that company systemically. So that's what I'm here for the long haul.
Well, that's definitely, Christian, hi, how are you? That's definitely what I wanted to touch on as well, because it's interesting how they tried to put it on you when you decided to protest against the conditions that were there, saying that, hey, they're lying about the people that even have or that have tested positive for COVID. They have us in these conditions during the height of the pandemic. And all of the sudden, they turned around and said they fired you because you were putting the workers' lives in danger, and that because of you, they were now testing positive, or they tried to put that rhetoric out there. How did you correct the story and make it yours and correct the narrative?
Yeah.
I continue to tell the truth. The truth will set you free. And I told the truth from the beginning. And ultimately, as a result, now in this new lawsuit, you've seen, if you read the lawsuit now, 2 HR reps, the top HR of the building, and her BP, her business partner, wrote a letter in solidarity saying that I should have never been terminated. You know, they said that the termination was justified and that the quarantine policy was never clarified to me. And also, I never returned inside the facility when I protested. I was outside the entire time. So, again, I told the same story from the beginning. And now it's starting to come to the light. You know, the truth is coming out there. And I think the people that were behind the scenes that had to sit in on that termination, they're starting to feel that it was definitely wrong. And they're going to speak up about it. And I'm happy to see that it's coming out now.
Yeah, and it's also because of your voice, right? You decided to take a stance and take a stand against what was going on in there during the pandemic, although they tried to put that smear campaign out and said that you weren't smart, you weren't articulate. Indeed, you were. You know, you weren't doing this for clout. You were doing this because this was affecting you and the people that you were working around. How would you say that your life has changed in this past year with you doing the protest and you traveling to make sure that other people in these Amazon locations are also have
every mansion, you went to every mansion, Jeff Bezos, man.
Everyone.
That's real G.
Bad boy.
On Google. You know, I mean, I'm pretty sure you got more of them, but we hit up a lot of them, and you know, my life changed forever. You know, definitely couldn't imagine this a year ago. I actually just looked at one of my memories on like Snapchat. I think I was in the club popping bottles last year. So, you know, I just tell people I wasn't an organizer beforehand. I was a concerned supervisor, obviously a father of kids. And that was my main concern, my children and my family. But I realized it's a bigger picture. And it's bigger than me. And, you know, if nobody else would have did it, I don't think we would have got to this point. You know, if I didn't step up, if I didn't continue to fight back, I don't know how long workers would have went unprotected, number one. Number two, once again, I don't think Jeff Bezos would have retired this year. So it's a lot of that, you know, that happened.
Yeah, I was say like he's the heat that's getting ready to come to Amazon. Jeff Bezos is like, I'm out of here. He stepped down for Amazon, but we still know where his mansions are, and we know where his money is coming from, and we know where all those facilities are, especially in Atlanta. They're everywhere. And in the last time we spoke, let me get off that train of thought because it takes me somewhere dark. The last time we spoke, you said that you also had difficulty convincing some of the workers at the warehouse to participate in this. A year later, and all the stuff that I know that they went through, do you think their minds have changed? And have you heard from any of them? And have any of them come that were hesitant before? Are any of them standing in solidarity with you now?
Yes, we definitely gained a lot more support. Workers definitely seen the issues. They actually lived it. They're still going through it as we speak. There's still workers still contracting the virus, unfortunately. We had a worker who just died a few weeks ago from Virginia. Wow. He was a COVID tester. You know, Pushan Brown, you know, I had to raise money for that family. So we're still living with the same issues I was fighting on day one. But we definitely have a lot more support now, even international support, you know, from Amazon workers over the world. So, you know, I'm hoping once again with the union vote in Alabama, I'll have some good news after March 29th when the vote is closed, to come back up here in New York and start, you know, organizing that building again in the Staten Island. Part of the lawsuit is actual reinstatement. So is it possible they reinstate me? You know, that probably
better position only. Better position only. We ain't taking nothing less, baby.
Yeah. Nah, they needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Nah. Listen. Before we get out of here, because we're coming up on the half hour mark, but I want the people to support you. And tell them. Is your GoFundMe still up? Matter of fact. Right. So tell them about where they can financially support you and where they can follow you, and anything else you need them to know about your work.
Absolutely. Yes. Follow me on Twitter at @shut_down Amazon. No surprise there. My organization at TCOEW on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at TCOEW. The GoFundMe is on my Instagram page. And the link is in the bio, Chris.Smalls_.
Yeah. Christian Smalls, brother, thank you so much. I just want to say this while you're on air, before we turn it over to the DJ to take us out of here. Rebecca, if you want to get a last word, obviously it's your show. I'm just filling in. But man, one thing that I came to terms with over this pandemic was that the revolution will not be led by podcasters. It won't be led by YouTubers. Ain't going to be led by people like me. It's going to be led by brothers and sisters and non-gender conforming individuals like you who are actually out there with your lives on the line right now in this moment, delivering packages to the rest of us privileged people who have the luxury of staying this pandemic at home. So I salute you, brother, in solidarity.
And also, Christian, like I said, they tried to count you out. It's just a theme for the week. Today, they tried to literally count you out, they tried to count you out back at that time, and you were just a supervisor that was concerned, but you pulled back up and you was like, well, who ain't smart? Who's not articulate? I'm fighting for people. I'm doing my thing. And you just been winning ever since. But the fact that you're doing it, by helping people, that is the biggest part to me. And when you are genuine like you, it's going to keep on coming. Like your heart is really, truly there. And I think that that's why it's important that people see this and they support you. It's just going to grow, and more power to you, brother. More power to you.
Yeah.
Baby, you set my soul on fire every morning and every evening. Ooh. And maybe we can't get any higher, but if you like to take a ride, we can discuss.
But if you want to kill all the businesses simultaneously, you implement Marxism. And so I have a vast knowledge of Marxism and Stalinism and communism and all these isms. And I know a lot about the Bible. And I have a lot of doctors who are clients. And anyway, so I know the different silos of information. I see how it fits. So I do all my research. And this is what I found out in January of 2020. Here we go. The word corona has 6 letters in it. C-O-R-O-N-A. 6. The letter C has the number 3 in it. It's the letter C is the 3rd letter in the alphabet. The 3rd letter in the alphabet. O is the 15th letter. R is the 18th. O is the 15th. N is the 14th. A is the 1st. Add that up, it's 66.
Wow.
666.
That is the most conspiracy thing that I've ever heard.
I told y'all I had a clip for you.
In my
That's
life.
a lot, though.
He said that man had documentation written by his child to explain why there's 666 in here.
Y'all better be glad I don't have a mark over here.
He literally sat down. Need to be done because if you look at his face, he's like, "Is this serious? Like, is this man really on here?" And then he pulled. I ain't gonna say that. He pulled a man that is well known online for taking credit for work that he didn't do and getting real famous off of it. But he said he's a theologian. Yeah, he knows the Bible. He knows numbers. He's a scientist. He's all of this all in one. And this is why you should believe him. And this is a pure conspiracy. This is like me just saying,
That's the highest level of conspiracy.
You guys, I'm Black, and my melanin empowers me to speak with a deeper voice. See, if you can see, I have a black shirt, and because I'm wearing a black shirt, I have black print, and because I have these black prints in here, and if you really look at them, they're snakeskin, and it shows that we come from the earth. And then I made sure to add that brown in there, brown and black equals unity, and then my earrings are showing where we actually originate from and what is the color of this earring. It is black.
It's black, sister.
That black empowers you to have a deeper, stronger voice. You see how that all ties back to how it started.
I need some congos.
Ruder to the China to the.
Turns out I play carcass.
Bang bang.
Hakuna Matata, should have bought a Hyundai. Everything's going our way. Hey.
Right on, brother.
I gotta say it like this. This is how we do it as the Black man interpreting the white man's interpretation of their conspiracy. We look at Mother Africa. We recognize that from the bowels of Mother Africa, we have the vibranium. We got the vibranium running in our DNA. You have to understand that B represents the number 2 in the alphabet. L represents whatever the number L represents in the alphabet. I don't know what it stands and adds up to, but it means black is beautiful. That's what the hell blacks translates into.
Brother.
777.
From a king. It can only come from a king, my brother. And this shows me that you are awakened from your 3rd and 4th eye. I don't know, but that is what I know.
The medulla oblongata is operating at a frequency.
That's all.
The hematoma is the melanoma, and the melanin is the.
We love our black, and we love it black. But don't come for us, Hotep.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we love y'all. We love y'all. We're not mocking y'all.
We love y'all. Okay.
We're not mocking y'all. We don't have time for. We don't need y'all as enemies. We need y'all to jump in. Imitation is a form of flattery. Hotep, y'all come on.
Right.
It is the virus of white supremacy that has carried COVID-19. You all have been bringing all of your diseases to America.
My brother. I think this will only sound best if it comes from a black queen that is me. I am her.
You didn't let me finish my part. It's been spreading COVID-19 since 1492, Rebecca.
Since 1492. If you look at 1492 and you add 14 and 92, what do you get? I don't know.
666.
But what do you
I don't know. You multiply
it. It's a number that doesn't equate to our cells. Our cells were meant to divide and come back together and reproduce naturally without any injection of the man being a man without any melanin. If I can say that again, the man being the man without any melanin. So if we put our trust in the man without any melanin, what's going to happen is the injection inside of us is going to start making us clear.
They want our melanin, my black sister.
Clear in skin color where people can't really see how we shine when the sun shines on our skin, and there is no more melanin. Again, we're getting injection from the man without any melanin, my brother. I have one of those hats. Look, while you go get
right-wing pastor Greg Locke as he's talking about COVID-19. Now, Rebecca, you know Pastor Greg Locke because he's the one that was out there on the stage kicking and screaming and doing all those things bombastically like you described. The theatrics, right?
I mean, we do the theatrics too, but yeah.
We do, but we do it better. We do, you know, it's from our DNA that we do it. They imitate, they colonize that. But I digress. Listen to Pastor Greg Locke as he is ministering to his people this false message. Listen.
The last 15 or 16 months has really just been a dress rehearsal. You know, I tell people it's not the mark of the beast. I get that. But it is a precursor for the beast system, because now we know what churches are going to close. We know who's going to roll over. We know who's going to stand up. They already know. And so I tell people they know who's going to be a problem and they know who's not. Well, I'm going to be a problem. Okay, I have no trouble with that. I'm going to be a problem. I'm going to be a rebel rouser, because when tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes biblical. And I don't think people understand that fact. Everybody wants to quote Romans 13. I know pastors in the United States of America that I've preached for that if this would have been, you know, Nazi Germany, they would have been the first person to put a Jew on a boxcar and then start quoting Bible verses about Romans 13 and how we ought to obey the governing authorities. These are Acts chapter 5 days. We have to obey God rather than man.
Before y'all respond, I just want to make sure that we understand what this clown is talking about. He's talking about getting the vaccine. He's talking about the COVID-19 vaccination and how that is a precursor for the mark of the beast and how that is synonymous with the oppression that the Jewish people faced during the Holocaust. And he's preaching it to his members as if it is the gospel truth. Rebecca.
It's the same thing I just said. You know, hearing what he has to say about the vaccine, he's also somebody that probably advises what's that little Fox News host name that we used to cover a lot with the little bang? Tucker Carlson. Right, him as well.
with the little bang.
This is where they get their good counsel. So, you know, to hear this is nothing to me, because it's just what they do make sure, though, is that the message that they send, the message that goes across, is going to always align, right, with their political view. All of them. You ain't never going to go to one of them and ask them, how do you feel about the vaccine? And hear them say, well, you know what? I think the vaccine is going to save lives. You're going to hear this exact same thing. They're putting in a chip in our bodies to control us. And then in the church, they're going to change that to remix it to basically that is the mark of the beast. And that's how they're going to, and the government uses it to control you. And that isn't of God. We're not meant to be controlled by the world. And the Bible says what we need to do as a people is go and rebel. And what we saw, though, mind you, these are the same people that preached to those people that walked up those Capitol steps on the 6th for that terrorist attack. Okay, so this is what they teach them to do. That is the form of rebellion. And him saying that, anytime he says that, that's what the people that he advises hears. That's what those people did on January 6th. And you can bet your bottom dollar that won't be the last time they do something like that. So,
Brother Mac, wow.
Well, you know, Ben, you know, I love bringing receipts. And given that you have been a man of divinity, and I, a Sunday school dropout, I will defer. Thank you very much.
Well, listen, I can't really claim to be a man of divinity, but I did learn enough to know BS. I did learn enough to know BS teaching when I see it. And Pastor Greg Locke, along with this entire thought process of God being on the side of our oppressors. But there's no way in hell you could go through Exodus and come out with the idea that God is on the side of white supremacy.
The same God that they taught, that they wanted to teach, hey, this is right because the Bible says it. And, you being Black, you got to be enslaved and treated the way that you were treated. And that's the same teaching. So when I hear any person that was supported Donald Trump, any conservative person, but they're the same people that still believe that George Floyd deserved to die, right? So,
or that lightning strike was caused by God.
The same thing, all of that. So even when you say, Ben, that there's no way that these people actually can tell us that the Bible is going to back this up, they do believe that though, and they will tell us that because they told them slaves, that this was it. This is the same way. So even in 2020, they still walk in that. They still believe that. So I'm not surprised. And the more that we have people in power that look like us, like the Daniel Camerons of the world, they're going to say that is godly. How this Black man acts is godly, how he supports all white ideas and things like that. But in the same sense, he prays over his food and he says his grace. That's a godly man right there. That's what they teach us.
I will say this, even as a Sunday school dropout, religion should promote a oneness of humanity. And basically what we're talking about in this situation of the son of negative 45, little negative, is reason and stupid are trying to have a conversation. And I'll say it again, reason and stupid. It is impossible for reason and stupid to have a conversation. It is simply impossible.
I look at these folks and I look at the fact that they have no compunction about co-opting Martin Luther King. We said that with On the Clock with Georgia Fort. We see they love promoting people like Daniel Cameron, like you said, Rebecca Zora, the Kentucky District Attorney, or Attorney General rather, who refused to bring charges against the cops who killed Breonna Taylor. Right?
Let's call him Little Danny.
Little Danny. Little Danny refused to do his job and lied to us and called it justice. We saw it in Little Ty Smith, the video that we watched earlier, responding to Fox News and saying that slavery wasn't racist. They absolutely love promoting individuals and narratives that protect white supremacy. And that's all.
Okay. Well, Brother Ben, I think I got it. Since we've been talking about little baby Jesus, we've been into the scripture. What Little Ty and Little Danny and Little Cammy, what they all represent, scripturally speaking, would be the one who accepted those 30 dirty pieces of silver. You may know him as Judas. Like it or not.
There are always going to be people who are willing to sell out their own. Hell, they sold out Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. You think they won't sell us out for whatever contract they got for the chance to run for Mitch McConnell's seat, Little Daniel?
Little Danny.
Let's go to a quick break. We go a quick break. We got to snap on somebody who's going after one of our little sisters. Joining me now is author and journalist John Nichols. He is of thenation.com and author of the book, The Fight for the Soul of the Democratic Party, and a friend of the show. John, thank you so much for coming back and sharing this time with us.
I'm honored to be with you, my friend. And I do like being identified as a friend of this show. I think it's a great one.
Oh, thank you so much for that. I have followed your work for years because you cut to the core of the intersection of race, class, white supremacy, capitalism, the Democratic Party. But your most recent article dealing with Ron Johnson, and not only from the perspective of the bidding of the ultra rich, which is a part of the title, but tell us what you have found in the conjunction, in the intersection rather, of Ron Johnson, the Republican Party, and the moment that we find ourselves in American history.
Absolutely. Ron Johnson is probably the most vulnerable Republican U.S. senator in 2022. He hasn't announced whether he'll run for re-election, but it's expected that he will. Donald Trump is actively encouraging him to run. And the thing to understand about Ron Johnson is that until Trump came along, he was a backbencher. He was somebody people didn't pay attention to. When Trump came on the scene, Johnson kind of flowered. He was excited. He was thrilled. He loves this world of conspiracy theories and kind of really ugly, crude politics. That's where Johnson's at. And so a lot of people think of him as just a, kind of an unblinking, unthinking Trumper. But there's a deeper, darker side to the guy, and that is he's a very rich man who got himself elected to the U.S. Senate by spending a lot of money, much of it his own money initially. And since he has been there, he has used his position to dramatically enrich his campaign donors. And a new study by ProPublica reveals that two major donors to the Johnson's campaign and to his political projects, to PACs that have supported him in key elections, gave in the last election cycle about $20 million to help Johnson get elected.
Wow.
I know, it's a huge amount.
Wow.
But here's a bigger number for you, my friend. Johnson then went to the mat in the 2017 tax cut fight, the Trump tax cut, to include a small provision that even Trump didn't want to do, right? And because it was so closely divided, Johnson said, well, I'm not going to vote for this unless I get this. It became such a big deal that they included the provision he had asked for. It is now revealed through confidential documents that that provision could be worth, it already has been worth to these major donors to Johnson's campaign, over $200 million. And it could ultimately be worth, it is expected that it could be worth $500 million, $500 million.
Wow.
So a $20 million investment in Ron Johnson gets you $500 million.
And for the ruling elite, for the wealthy in this country, that's a good investment, right? And we've seen this model. This is nothing new, but I don't know that I've ever seen it to this extreme. And perhaps you could talk about that from the historical perspective, because he's overachieving in terms of the grift.
Yeah, the grift is the right word, my friend. And he is overachieving. Look, we need to understand. And this is when you were introducing, you're talking about these kind of critical junctures, these intersections that we have in our politics. There's a reason why this country operates the way it operates. For a very long time, really since the founding of the country, you have had wealthy people using the government of this country to benefit themselves. Not sometimes directly, i.e. members of Congress who are enriching themselves, but often enriching their class, their donors, their supporters, to make sure that they remain in a position of economic and social and political power.
Right.
So that's always been there. We shouldn't, be neglectful of that reality. But what we should understand is that in Ron Johnson and people like him, this operates on steroids. And we are now in a moment where the Democrats have narrow control of the Congress. And that we've seen some dialing back of some of the worst things that happen. But one of the things that really needs to be addressed, and Bernie Sanders and others have talked about this, is the 2017 tax cut. Because that legislation has within it not just lower taxes for billionaires. I mean, incredible giveaway of just an immense amount of money to the super rich. It also has these little footnotes, if you will, these little lines of language that you and I wouldn't even have paid much attention to that are making the super rich dramatically richer. They're not paying their taxes, and they're not paying their taxes because language was inserted, in this case at the behest of Ron Johnson, that allowed them to avoid when we think of somebody not paying taxes, you think, oh, well, maybe, $20,000, $30,000, $100,000, maybe $1 million, but $500 million.
Wow. This is, I remember the tax fight of 2017 well. I was neck deep in it along with everyone else, trying to stop it from happening. But it was a moment that the Republican Party seized upon their majorities with no regard for a supermajority, using every tool at their disposal to get their agenda accomplished. And you outlined the path for Ron Johnson getting his donors somewhere potentially to the tune of $500 million. Republicans know how to use power to get what they want. What's the problem with the Democratic Party?
Oh, It's writ large. I mean, the problem with the Democratic Party is that when Republicans are in power, they seek to lock their power in.
Yeah.
They seek to suppress votes. They seek to restructure election systems. They seek to weaken unions. They do all sorts of things. And they seek to dramatically enrich the people who support them at election time. So they wire it for themselves.
Right.
Then when Democrats come in, instead of trying to clean the mess up, and I don't want Democrats to wire things for themselves. I want Democrats to create a fair and equitable and just system of governance, and that's going to offend a lot of corporations and even some Democratic donors at times. But instead of trying to clean the mess up, Democrats come in and too often manage.
That's right.
They manage what's handed to them. They are a managerial political party. And when you've had corruption and then it's handed off to you and you manage that corruption, you essentially lock it in.
Yes. Yes. And in one of your other recent articles dealing with the census and the upcoming gerrymandering and redistricting, this presents the Republican Party, the GOP, with a new opportunity to secure their power. Talk about that other article of yours at the Nation.
Sure. And I'm so glad you're focusing on it, because I really think that as much as exposing the corruption and the kind of backdoor dealing of the past, we have to be very conscious of the moment we live in. We're right now at a critical juncture. The much delayed, and frankly, I would argue much warped, census process has now produced data that will be used to draw the district lines for congressional districts, state legislative districts, and right down to the city council and the county commission level. This is really the definitional data that we've got. Now, at the top line, it tells us some really exciting things. America is becoming a more diverse country. America is becoming a country where, frankly, if you drew fair maps, you'd have a lot of possibility for a Congress that looked a lot more like America, right? I mean, the possibilities are more real than ever. And yet, what we have is a clear plan by the Republicans. They're not secret about it at all.
Right.
A clear plan to use this data not to create maps, not to create lines for congressional districts and legislative districts that reflect this growing diversity, that really give us a representative Congress, but to gerrymander the process in radical ways that will actually increase Republican majorities in states that are diversifying. Now, I'm not one of those people who tells you that diversity necessarily leads to a Democratic majority. That's not always the case. I mean, I understand that we have to recognize all these dynamics. But what I can tell you is that the Republican plan is to use this data for one purpose and one purpose only. And that is to warp the process sufficiently that even if most people vote for Democratic candidates in a particular state, that state will have overwhelming Republican representation.
And this is what we see all across the country, right? When you couple the redistricting with the reality of the Electoral College, this is how Republicans who represent a minority opinion in this country, this is how, like that 30% or that 33% that no matter what Donald Trump did, they always supported him. This is how we have the tyranny of the minority. Could you tell the audience not only about the tyranny of the majority, but how do we overcome that when we have a Democratic Party that doesn't seem to recognize the score?
Well, it's clear. I'll start with the Democratic Party. It's clear they do not recognize the score. They left for recess, for their summer recess, and would that we could all have been, take a month off, right?
Right.
Wonderful. So they're out. They've left Washington, and they didn't in the Senate do the single thing they need to do, which is overturn the filibuster, or at least find a workaround on democracy issues, and pass the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. These two pieces of legislation address gerrymandering. They literally get to the heart of the matter. Now, literally days before the data came down, at a point when the Congress could have done exactly what they need to do to make sure that we get fair lines. They didn't do it. And so now we're in this danger zone. So that I begin with that side of it, why that's concerning. Now, why is it a danger zone? Because very, very wealthy people, and remember we started our conversation with our Republican friends who make the rich much richer.
Yeah.
Very wealthy people have poured a fortune into weaponizing the redistricting process. And what they have done is develop computer programs, develop strategies, hired people, brought folks into the mix, brought lawyers in. They're ready to go. And in states across the country, they're going to do it. They're going to draw lines that create a circumstance much like what's happened in my home state of Wisconsin. In 2011, the Republicans had control of the governorship and the state legislature. They radically gerrymandered the state in a way much worse than many states around the country. But they set the model in Wisconsin. Now, what happened? In several election cycles in Wisconsin, we've had as many as 200,000 more people vote for Democrats to control the legislature than Republicans, and yet the Republicans have retained a two-thirds majority, almost two-thirds majority in the legislature. You understand, this is just breaking the very concept of democracy. And that's
breaking the very concept of democracy. I believe that should be the motto of the Republican Party, but I also believe that should be the understanding of the complicity of the Democrats by not understanding the score. I know this may be beating a dead horse, but I think for the audience's sake, could you just express in very direct terms what the Democratic Party could actually be doing with the power that they currently have to stop the Republican Party from breaking democracy?
Sure. It's a very simple process, and it's not too late. I mean, I don't want to be too hopeless on this. It does take time to gerrymander. And so the new data that's come down is, it's already being jammed into those computers. It's already, the strategists are already at work. They are in both Republican and Democratic controlled states trying to draw lines, and the process is in play. It's just that for a variety of reasons, the process favors the Republicans because they control more state houses at this point. And they also control them in a lot of the places, southern states like Texas, Florida, where you've had a little bit of an increase in population. So they're going to draw more seats, while many northern seats are going to lose seats, New York, Illinois, places like that. So with that understood, they are rushing to do this. And the truth of the matter is, without federal intervention, without some sort of federal standard that says gerrymandering cannot be the way in which we use this data, they're going to get away with it. They're going to do it. Now, they'll be challenged in the courts, and sometimes a judge will say no. It will often be when a map is genuinely and clearly discriminatory, right? When there's clear evidence of something that's fundamentally wrong. But the courts will not intervene to say, no, this is just simply partisan. You've drawn a map that is anti-democratic, that does not create competitive districts, that doesn't allow for a result that clearly represents the will of the people. Courts don't tend to do that. That's something Congress has to set down as a standard. Now, because they didn't do it before the recess, when the Senate gets back, if they do not move immediately to scrap the filibuster and to pass the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, if they don't do those two immediately, then we'll watch it day by day. You and I, we can come back on in September and October and November, and we can count the states off. Texas, Florida, Georgia, where you're not increasing the number of seats, but even with the same number of seats, you can reshuffle it. State after state after state. And I will tell you this, serious analysts say that through just the process of gerrymandering, the Republicans could well get the number of seats they need to effectively assure that in 2022 they get control of the House of Representatives. That's what's at stake if Democrats don't move in September. And we're even getting our chorus behind us, cheering us on.
Yeah, I think that's our cue, Brother John Nichols. My kids have just raided my home office. And it's a critical point of the conversation, because you're saying, before we get out of here, you're saying that if Democrats don't do what they need to do when they come back from recess, a recess that they shouldn't have taken, but I digress, we're going to be able to watch state by state as they fall to the gerrymandering forces of the Republican Party.
There is simply no question of it. You do such a great job of covering all these issues. And I know you'll do it well in the fall. But frankly, I don't want you to have to do it. I don't want myself to have to be writing, one, horrified, aghast, deeply troubled headline after another about how a gerrymander in Texas has, effectively undermined democracy in that state. A gerrymander in Georgia has effectively undermined democracy in that state. In Florida, in state after state after state. And I don't want to write that piece, back in 2022 that says, even though more people voted for Democrats for Congress than Republicans, Republicans got control of the House of Representatives.
Wow. The writing is on the wall. And I hope that the powers that be will listen, so that we don't have to find a way to salvage democracy from the Democrats having the power to protect it, but not protecting it. John Nichols of The Nation, two of your most recent articles were covering the census, and as well as the article on Ron Johnson. I had no idea he was such a prolific grifter. Thank you for covering these stories for us.
It's an honor to be with you, my friend. Thanks for covering him on your show.
Thank you so much.
I don't think they know. That's my word. Yeah. That's my hold up. You gonna say what they said, but so I skip straight ahead to the bread part. Top out, I'm cool on the chick check. With the kid, know I got the gift pack. You gonna say what they said, but so I skip straight ahead to the bread part. Top out, I'm cool on the chick check. With the kid, know I got the gift pack. Keep it real with you, I've been in the field in position. Look, hey, I've been trill, you can tell by how I feel when you with me. Look, wave, tell me, can you slide for a real one? Slide for me, slide for me. Can you slide for a real one? Can you slide for me, slide for me? Can you slide for a real one? Can you slide for a real one? Can't tell me nothing, I'm flexing stunting. Eating all my veggies in my pocket, half an onion. And that pack smell like a Funyun. Trump be beating, shit be humming. You can hear me around the corner before you ever see me coming. And they know just how we coming. Pants drumming, she gon' bust it open way before I finish thumbing. I can put you on some paper, proper play and teach you something. Got my stones on Himalaya, know I'm out your sucker ducking. Ain't no need for that discussion, bluffing with the game. About to build a couple million, came with nothing but my name. I'ma twist it, flip it, stick it like a bop it. Tell them stop it, all them haters out of pocket. Let me plug it like a socket, baby. You gonna say what they said, part. So I skip straight ahead to the bread part. Top out, I'm cool.
No one can come into the Father but by me. That's right. That's the only way you're going to get to him. That's right. You ain't going to get to him through Walmart. You ain't going to get to him through the 401k. That's right. You ain't going to get to him by being a stockholder. That's right. You're only going to get to him through Jesus. Amen. So I want to encourage you this morning as we come together as a community from all different places and all different races to honor God, to come together as one, the body of Christ, to make a difference in Columbus, Mississippi, for His honor and for His glory, till His kingdom comes. Amen?
Okay. I watched this video, and folks, if you ever read my Pathos, my blog over at Pathos, you know that I'm like a unashamed. I'm a Christian. That's just who I am. That's my background. I used to pastor. I used to do all kinds of things in the church. So when I watched this, I want you to understand my critique of it when I discuss it. Seeing that instantly takes my mind back to the time in slavery when they were able to keep all of the slaves pacified by feeding them religion. Now, I'm fully aware of all of the implications of what I just said. Trust me, on so many more levels, I'm very astutely aware of it. But it's just so amazing
that, and I'm not even going to talk about the intersection of church and state, right? Because it's not really a church and state question, because this is Walmart is a public company, but it's somewhere in their policies and procedures, this has to be okay or else the guy would get fired, right? So I'm not talking about the intersection of church and state here. I'm talking about all of those poor people sitting around this white guy. He could have been a black guy for all that matter. It's the same critique, right? But it just harkens back to slavery. But anyway, all of these poor people who are getting their Monday morning motivation sermon to, not focus on what you can get from Walmart. Don't focus on what you can get from your stocks and bonds, focus only on Jesus on aisle 3, and I'm like, the reality of it is I know how much Walmart pays their people, their clerks, the people who stock the aisles, they pay them just enough for them to not be able to survive. And what they do is they teach them to, okay, this is how much you make, and this is where you can go get welfare. This is where you can go get food stamps. This is where you can go get this type of subsidy, and this is housing assistance. So Walmart pays these people effectively sharecropping wages. Just enough wage to say that you're working, but you're turning around. They probably spend all of their check in Walmart. And come Christmas time, they spend all their money in Walmart and birthday time, right? So here essentially are a bunch of sharecroppers who work their butts off. They probably work 50 and 60 hours a week. So I'm not knocking them. What I'm saying is I'm knocking this imagery. I'm knocking this narrative that this man is motivating them to not pay attention to Walmart. Don't pay attention to the stocks that you probably don't have enough. You don't have a significant share in, if you have any share in. Don't pay attention to all that. Just say, praise the Lord, and let's get our day going. And it does a hell of a job, man. I'm telling you, there's nothing more motivating than when you hear somebody say, praise the Lord and hallelujah and all that stuff. But if you allow that to be a distraction from the reality of your situations around you, then you are doing a disservice not only to you, but you're doing a disservice to your faith, right? You're doing a disservice to everyone. You are perpetuating. You're helping to maintain the system of oppression. Those people in that aisle that I know probably don't make more than $10 an hour, if that, right? They should be getting motivated around demanding a higher wage from Walmart. But I guarantee you that they're not going to see. You can organize. You can have a meeting before work as long as it's about religion. So you can get together and say hallelujah, but you can't get together and say, can I get $15 an hour? That is the framework. $8.50 an hour after 5 years in Columbus. My producer just sent to me $8.50 an hour after 5 years of working in Columbus, Mississippi. And this is how they get away with it, by getting everyone in a circle and saying, come on, hallelujah. Jesus this and Jesus that. I love Jesus probably more than any of them. But when you use religion to manipulate people and to make people apathetic and to make them drunk with the opium of the masses, if I can steal that from whoever said it, right? Then you are keeping them from getting and moving into action. They can't unionize, but they can have church service before work. And this is why it's so tough for. That's why so many people have problems with religion. I understand why people have problems with religion when it's allowed to manipulate like this, and it's allowed to distract like this. It's allowed to distract them from the reality that in Columbus, Mississippi, you make $8.50 an hour after 5 years of work with Walmart. So no, you can't unionize with Walmart. One Walmart unionized, they closed it and shut it down, and they got a penalty from the federal government. But what's a penalty? What's a $10 million penalty? What's a $50 million penalty when you're bringing in billions of dollars every quarter, right? So yeah, you can get together and have church service, but you can't get together and unionize. And that's how they distract people. People are going to go back to work and say, oh, I love Jimmy. But let's just imagine this guy's name is Jimmy. I love Jimmy because he really brings the word, and we have such a good time at Walmart. I mean, girl, we had church service at Walmart, but you can't get enough money to live on at Walmart.
Ben Shapiro is a conservative, commentator. He is very upset about the fact that black people are excited about the Black Panther movie.
I mean, it's Black history, for goodness sake. Can we get this? Leave us alone, colonizer. Leave us alone. Trump's agenda for immigrants in America is clear. No immigrants of colors allowed. The wall, the Muslim ban, the expiration of DACA and TPS, they all solidify this. The Haitians on TPS, what have they done other than take advantage of the opportunities given to them here? What? The U.S. can take Haiti's money, resources, but doesn't want my people?
But more importantly, to blame this horrific tragedy on the lack of respect for Trump is beyond the pale. It shows the extent to which Robertson and people like him are willing to use religion to manipulate their following in exchange for political power with the Republican Party.
Imagine going to work and sending your 7-year-old daughter off to school as usual in her ponytails or her braids, only to go pick her up and find that her hair has been shaved. But still, it's wrong whether it happened to any child of any race. I know that I would be going to jail if this were me.
So I'm sorry, Hannity. Your big breaking news is nothing more than the quintessential example of propagandistic deflection to protect your beloved Donald Trump from the staggering stupidity that is Donald Trump Jr. But you can't tell Hannity that. He thought he was taking us to school.
Get out your pad and your pen. You may actually learn a thing or two.
Oh, no, Hannity. You're the only one who needs to take notes. Absolutely has nothing to say here that's valuable. So he crafts this straw man. Nobody has ever argued anything that he said here.
We are not playing this week. We're not playing this month. Okay, actually, you know what? I'm not playing this year, okay? I'm not playing this year.
I want to bring to the screen our first guest who absolutely has nothing to say about Kirk Franklin, but has a lot to say about what's going on with labor movements across the country. His name is Mike Elk.
I might have a lot to say about Kirk Franklin, but I got a lot to say about Kirk Flood. And Kirk Flood would have been in this kind of fight in Amazon in Alabama, because that's what he did.
Hey, man, listen, Mike. Hey, thanks so much for joining.
Hey, you want to talk about Kirk Flood? We can talk about Kirk Flood for a couple of hours. I mean, be careful what you wish for here, you know?
Hey, man, I'm trying to introduce you. Mike Elk is a labor journalist and founder of Payday Report, which covers labor in news deserts. Before founding Payday Report, Mike spent years covering union organizing in the South for The Guardian. Mike, first and foremost, hey, thanks so much for joining me. How are you this morning, man?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
Hey, man, we're doing great. Listen, I want to talk to you specifically about, we're going to start in Alabama, Bessemer, Alabama. You've been covering that in great detail. Can you give us an update of where that process is and some of the political implications around it?
Well, it's a major moment. I mean, it's like a Selma type moment, in my opinion. I certainly think Terry Sewell sees it that way. And what's been happening there is they've been trying to organize a union there for about a year. The plant opened, not a plant, it's a warehouse. I keep calling it a plant, but it's a warehouse. It opened about a year ago. It's a majority black female workforce. And it's about 85% black, the entire plant. And they're going to have a union vote there. And what's happened is that Amazon has fought back in all these wild ways that you see union busters do all the time. They hold these incredibly manipulative meetings with people where they say, oh, hey, you vote for a union, the plant might close. You might lose your job, buddy, but look, open door here. You can walk in the door any day with me, And that's a lot of what's going on right now. They hold these meetings, and I've seen these meetings. I've been in these meetings where they say, they bring in these guys. What's incredible, I think, about this story is that the majority of the management at that Amazon plant in Alabama is white. Majority. It's 85% black workforce. It's not a culturally competent management in any way, but they decided, if we're going to bust the union, we're going to bring in black union busters. We're going to bring in corporate lawyers from Morehouse to do this. And that's what they're doing.
that the divide and conquer tactic is a pretty standard move in union busting. And in one of your recent reports, you published a piece called "Amazon Offers 2,000 Resignation Bonuses to Bust Union Drive in Alabama." Tell me about that particular technique that they're trying to use.
Well, let's think about it this way. There's a lot to unpack here, but imagine, the job at Amazon for Birmingham. Isn't that bad of a job? They call Birmingham the Pittsburgh of the South. I live in Pittsburgh, and when I went down there to Birmingham, I was like, wow, unions are a lot like us. I mean, you're, Southern Appalachians, we're at the northern tip of Appalachia. Mm-hmm. And those folks down there, the starting wage there is about $16.20 an hour with crappy HMO health insurance, but it's something,
Right.
The average Amazon picker, this is someone who moves around, equipment all day in a warehouse. Average Amazon picker walks 12 miles a day.
Wow.
So if you're a young guy, particularly, you're a young black guy right out of high school, you didn't go to college or anything like that, you can go out to Amazon and get a pretty flexible job, making about $16.20 an hour, and then overtime. So you can easily be working as a picker and make $40, $50K a year. That's not tough. And for a lot of folks, getting that kind of job, it changes their life, as you can imagine.
Right.
The minimum wage in Birmingham is what, $7.25. The city of Birmingham has tried to pass an increased minimum wage, and then the state overrode it. And so, yeah, it's a very, very good job. And so what they go around to guys and they start saying things, and I've heard this a million times. What they say is, oh, if we get a union contract, some people might do better, but you might do worse, because when we get a union contract, we start all over. It's BS, because under federal labor law, if you unionize, you can't decrease someone's salary unless you can prove you did it for economic reasons.
Right.
So they pull this whole manipulative game and they say, hey, look, buddy, my door is always open. Give me another, come in, you talk to me anytime you want to talk to me. I'll give you a raise. You bring in the union, though. Hey, look, we heard you. And I know Ann Feeney, my friend Ann Feeney, the folk singer, compared what management does in these situations to how manipulative men that are abusive to their wives say, hey, come back, give me another chance. Yeah. And that's what Amazon is pulling right now.
That's actually a great analogy, and we actually use that analog between politics and relationships on this show a lot. And so I think that is a perfect way to describe it. My question then would be, why do we even go through these games, Mike? Right? Because we know at the end of the day, people need to unionize. Generally speaking, without the propaganda from corporations, people want to unionize because they understand the value of it. But why does the federal government force, why don't we just have unions as a standard in this country versus all the games that have to be played, this song and dance, where you're pitting the people against corporations that have unlimited amounts of money to crush unions?
Well, I think, look, I'm a Bernie guy like you are, and I think Biden will change the game on this, in my opinion. I've never seen anything like it in my entire career. You're in these incredibly manipulative meetings where, you're a kid out of high school, you're overmatched against some corporate lawyer, and the corporate lawyer is saying like, oh, didn't you see this case of corruption in your union? And yeah, corruption does happen in the union, right? And they'll start saying this stuff. And now what folks are just saying to shut it down is just, Joe Biden said this meeting shouldn't happen. We're not going to get into tit for tat here. We're not going to, because it's disinformation is what they're doing, right?
Right.
We're not going to get into tit for tat here. Joe Biden said this meeting shouldn't happen. Uncle Joe.
Yeah.
And that's a district there that voted 72% for Biden. That is his base.
Yeah.
Those are folks that just... So instead of being because what they so often do in union busting is they paint the people that are the union. Often they do a divide between the young and the old, right?
Right.
Particularly in a physically demanding workplace like that, they do a big divide between the young and the old. And so what's happening now is they'll always say, oh, well, the unions can be led by the troublemakers. The unions can be led by the people that are, not the good people here, right? You're a young person, you're working a job, you're making decent money. Not bad. You don't want to screw that up, and you don't know what to believe. And now and I think the really, really big thing that's the game changer here is that BLM, in terms of national BLM groups, have invested an incredible amount of money in organizing this place. There's a guy there. He's one of the founders of BLM in Birmingham, a guy named Eric Hall. We've been on the phone a lot. He's the chair of Our Revolution there. And they're running radio ads. And so they're able to come in the door and say, hey, because look, for somebody that doesn't know anything about unions, this could all be terribly confusing, don't you think?
Yeah. They're
able to come in the door and say, this is a racial justice struggle, what we're doing here. And Terry Sewell, she's a corporate Dem. She's a corporate Dem congresswoman there. I was talking to somebody on the phone the other day, and they said, Mike, didn't you really pick up on why Cori Bush and Jamal Bellman went down there with Terry Sewell? Which is that Terry Sewell's worried about getting primaried from the left. She's worried about it. And so she's from Selma, and they're taking this on. I think the administration is taking this on as a Selma moment. They might lose narrowly, but it will make the case for the PRO Act.
Right.
And Joe Biden, we can say a lot of criticisms of Joe Biden. We've had so many Southern Democrats as president. Joe Biden was the first president we've had ever, because, FDR helped create unions. He was, JFK was from the Northeast, but he was a rich kid. But, Biden was the first guy. He grew up in a steelworker coal mining town in Scranton. He grew up around unions all his life. And, when I deal with the Biden people, they're not best on everything, but they understand unions, if that makes much sense.
No, that does. And
it's not like you got to walk in the door with them and be like, this is what a union is.
And that's a huge. I mean, even the statement that he put out in favor of union organizing. I mean, that was a big help, and I think it's important for us to engage in good faith with the Biden administration and give them their props when they do something that is good. But I want to ask you about one other thing before we get out of here. There is a language shift that's happening on the right, and they are starting to position themselves as if they are the party for and the ideology for working people. And specifically, I want to bring up Marco Rubio. There was a clip over the weekend of Marco Rubio making it seem as though he was coming down on the side of the organizers, the union organizers in Bessemer, Alabama. But he positioned it really in a strange way. I don't know if you saw the clip where I saw it. He attacked Amazon for their wokeness and their corporatized identity politics, right? It's a very unique position, but I think it's very strategic because at the same time, over the weekend, I saw someone from the left, and I won't mention their names because they're a small account, but for the first time, I saw someone from the quote-unquote left attacking the PRO Act as a tool that is anti-worker because people unionizing, this is the argument, people who unionize actually get benefits that separate them from the working class. Now, this is convoluted on all sorts of levels, but when I did the math, man, there is on the right a concerted effort to try to relabel themselves as the working class party, right? And then on the left, you have a small faction that is trying to separate us from things that we know are good, which are unions. No matter how problematic some of them may have been, we know that we need unions. I just kind of wonder what you thought about that clip from Marco Rubio and all of these, all the games that are being played to try to mess up the alignment.
Well, I'll say this. It was a brilliant political move by Marco Rubio. If he wants to run for president in 2024, which is what he's talking about. There's so many layers to that. I was talking to a friend of mine, not quite a friend, but a union buster who lives in Florida. And here's the thing. 45% of union members are Republicans, right? So you have generations of folks who benefit from union contracts, particularly in Florida. You have construction union retirees from Jersey that moved down there, right? So Marco Rubio, he knows that crowd, but this is what's really, really funny, is I started, reading this op-ed and I started researching Rubio. In 1984, there was a massive hotel strike in Las Vegas, the Culinary Union called it. Marco Rubio's dad was a bartender. Marco Rubio claims, I don't know if it's true, but he claims this in his autobiography, that his dad crossed the picket line and that he called his dad a scab repeatedly. No, I mean, isn't that kind of, there's just so much back here. I don't even know what to make of it all. Because Rubio knows that, look, you want to run in a primary, you can go up to the Northeast, you can talk that union talk. And I mean, here's the other thing. Look, the PRO Act just passed. There was one Democrat who voted against it, Henry Seliar. The leading Democrat, who I know, I played ball against him as a kid, was Connor Lamb. He led the fight to help bring it in. Connor Lamb is about as blue dog as you can get. But when I was out covering Connor's first campaign, when he won in that Trump plus 14 district, he'd go out to Western PA, he'd go out to those kind of coal miner types. Western PA, when you get into coal country, similar to Northern Alabama in many ways. When I went down there and they called it Pittsburgh of the South, I was like, oh yeah, I get it, you know. And what Connor did is he'd go out there and he'd say, you know, the Republican running against me, he's for a right to work. And we would go out and we would tell this to like old union coal mine retirees, and they'd be like, he's for right to work, he's going to eliminate the minimum wage. I'm like, that's not technically what right to work means, but there's such messaging around it. And so when Connor Lamb, who attacks AOC, who goes after her all the time, is, you know, on the floor of the House fighting for the PRO Act, that tells you something about the popularity of it. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And everybody, I mean, think about this. Bernie Sanders, Marco Rubio, and Joe Biden are united on one issue, which is organizing Amazon. From different places, but I'll take it. Won't you?
So I mean, yeah, I'll take it. But my concern is that the attempt for a realignment and the willingness of some of our comrades to buy into it, because like you said, it's a brilliant move that Marco Rubio did. I agree, it was brilliant, but it's brilliant in an insidious way, because he's literally going to undermine unions. He literally is fighting on behalf of the top 1% of corporations. But if he can do it and couch it in populist language, exactly. And so
Josh Hawley's totally discredited at this point, right? I was talking with Santelli about this the other day. Josh Hawley's so discredited, and now Marco Rubio has that lane. It wouldn't surprise me, and I was talking with some others later, it wouldn't surprise me if Mitt Romney comes out for the union drive there. There's a whole lane. Like, think about Marco Rubio, right? He's from Florida. He can go get those Florida votes in the primary, but he's got to go up to the Northeast. He's got to go around to the Connor Lamb voters. He knows how to talk to them, because I know the Connor Lamb voters, and they're kind of conservative Democrats who I don't agree with them, but they really like unions a lot. And so Marco Rubio knows that he knows this personally, because in the story in the LA Times I read, he talks about making protest signs during the strike in '84 and calling his dad a scab. And I'm like, when I read that, I was like, this is just wow. Marco Rubio claims in his autobiography he called his dad a scab once. I mean, there's just, he gets it on a deep personal level. It's cynical, but it's brilliant, you know? If he wants to try to win that primary.
It's going to be fascinating to watch it play out. We're going to have to continue this conversation as we go. Mike Elk, man, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having us on.
I want to play this clip real quick from the 700 Club's Pat Robertson. This is how much they fear critical race theory. And you know what? If people like this fear it that much, maybe that's all the more reason we need to double and triple down on it. Let's take a look at it.
That the people of color have been oppressed by the white people. And the white people begin to be racist by the time they're 2 or 3 months old, and therefore the people of color have to rise up and overtake their oppressors, and then having gotten the whip handle, if I can use that term, then to instruct their white neighbors how to behave. Now, that's critical race theory.
Well, so actually it's not, but it does not sound that bad when you consider you all let 600,000 people die from COVID-19 because of your ignorance. When you consider the number of black people who are killed by police disproportionately. So when you consider the barbarism of Western civilization, you think about Christopher Columbus. You guys celebrate Christopher Columbus, and the Native Americans had to survive him. Right. When you really do the sum total of what your culture has done, then perhaps that should be the interpretation of critical race theory, but it's not.
No,
it's not.
Brother Dixon, let me tell you, this is, you brought me on to bring this historical perspective. And I've never seen this brother talking about what he thinks is critical race theory. I don't know how old that footage is, but the reason I'm laughing is because what he's telling you is what white folks have thought from the day that they enslaved our people. He just told you exactly. I can pull a passage from Thomas Jefferson saying exactly what he said, the exact thing. Jefferson said, I tremble when I think of my God, and God is a just God. And this will not go on forever. He says, I can view a day when the wheels of fortune would reverse. He said the exact same thing. George Washington. Blacks fought in the American Revolution, and so the Congress decided, no, we're going to kick them all out, because they were afraid that based on the oppression that they was giving us, now you want to arm us and say, fight for us, that we would do it. And then Lord Dunmore of Virginia said to blacks in his Dunmore Proclamation, any blacks that fight for us, we'll grant you your freedom. Shit, man, we went over there like 20,000 strong in a hurry, quick and in a hurry. And then the Continental Congress changed it. Even Abraham Lincoln and this Congress, remember now, when the Civil War started, they forbade blacks to take up arms and to fight for our own freedom. It was pressure from Thomas, Frederick Douglass, Charles Sumter, Thaddeus Stevens, and those radical Republicans that just kept putting pressure on Lincoln, that even in the Emancipation Proclamation, that's when he opened it up for us to fight. So this fear of this revolution and this revenge factor that we may take has permeated through America from day one. And I'm telling you now that those who are against the critical race theory, they have that same level of fear. It's just
yeah. Georgia, real quick on, I want to ask in context of the Derek Chauvin sentencing that we just came across, and you were one of two journalists in the nation to be in that verdict, not the verdict rather, but the sentencing. I'm curious in terms of the erasure and the whitewashing of history, because that defense attorney would really like to paint the picture of what happened to George Floyd. He would like to whitewash Derek Chauvin and the bloody murder of the brutal murder of George Floyd with the same whitewashing brush as America has done Christopher Columbus and Western culture and civilization and all the things that they celebrate. They really would like to rewrite the history for Derek Chauvin, wouldn't they?
Oh, yeah. You saw that day in and day out of the trial. Every day, Attorney Nelson coming in and basically saying that there was no way George Floyd died from a knee on his neck, that it was due to drugs and it was due to the positive COVID test and all of these other absurd things. And he actually had different experts come in and help try to tell that story, even all the way up to sentencing, where we saw Derek Chauvin's mother come in and reaffirm that he's a good man and really just not even acknowledge what happened. So much so to a fault where, I don't know if you guys noticed when we played that clip, she said on November 25th, I don't know where that woman has been, but
Right.
this incident did not happen on November 25th. The entire world, not just America, the entire world knows that George Floyd was killed on May 25th.
Right.
So I think that you're absolutely right. And for me as a journalist, it goes back to the importance of narrative, you know, and I keep trying to build a broader awareness about the power mainstream media has, because they're really the first line of defense to archive a lot of stories.
Right.
And so we give them a lot of power. We give mainstream media a lot of power to archive our stories, when a good case of this was the James Baldwin interview that ABC did in 1979, and they never actually aired it. So we give them our stories. They're following this trial. Who else independently, especially in our community, in the Black community, is archiving these stories, these facts, to have an independent account? Because if we leave it up to them, history will repeat itself, and they will do what they did, the same thing they did with slavery, the same thing that they did with lynchings, you know. And George Floyd, we just had an attorney say this was a modern day lynching, you know. And for a lot of the lynchings, they try to cover it up, they try to justify it, they make it more palatable, all of those things. So I think that you're right. And you know, in covering this case, there was a piece of information that I actually wanted to run by Dr. Mack. We here in Minneapolis, I'm headquartered in Minneapolis right now, and since George Floyd was killed on May 25th, 2020, the intersection where he was murdered has been shut down. And there were a group of organizers who came together, created 24 demands, and they have preserved that space. They've put barricades up. Recently, June 3rd, I think, was the day the city came in, removed the barricades. The barricades were put back up. June 15th, they came back in. So there's been this tug of war more recently, but we're looking at now over 390 days that there has been this ongoing protest in that space. And so it brought me to this question of what is the longest protest in American history? And I don't know if you know that off top, but the one a lot of people pointed to was the bus boycott, which I think was 381 days. And the question now being, is the protest at George Floyd Square, the intersection where he is killed, the longest protest in American history?
Well, you know, again, based on how we define protest today, in this kind of knee-jerk reaction to an event, one could look at the Montgomery bus boycott, as you stated, for 381 days. One could look at this. Well, I would tell you what America didn't want to recognize. And so if I think about it in a critical way, I would say this: the day that they started enslaving Black folks, that protest from that day. And even when you look in the vice president of the Confederacy was a man named Alexander Stephens. He wrote this speech called the Cornerstone Speech. And he starts off by saying the agitating questions relating to our peculiar institution, the agitating questions. I promise you, this agitation about us being free started from the day we were enslaved in this country. So if you look at, and again, most people want to think we sat on the sideline and didn't do anything. Like, for instance, you know, Joe Brown, the former judge. I mean, the dude's an idiot. And I'm calling him an idiot because I'm not going to spare him. You know, he literally said Juneteenth is Black folks taking an L. I took his gavel and told him he's turned this into a kangaroo court, and I took his black card. So, because again, he's obviously not aware or want to recognize our history. So this protest has been going for a while. But to your point, I do recognize, you know, the question that you're putting in. And, you know, outside of the Montgomery bus boycott and that length of time, I would say this. But what is clear is that the George Floyd protest is by far the largest protest in the history of this country. This protest involved well over 25 million people.
Wow.
There is not a protest that I know of in this nation that even came close to that. I literally thought Rodney King was, at the time, I thought Rodney King was the largest protest, if you will. And even before that, you go to the 1963 March on Washington. When we marched on Washington, there was somewhere between 200, if you put a large spectrum to it, 250, 300,000 people that came to that protest. 25 million, in every state in the union, all over the world, nothing even close to the reaction that the murder of George Floyd caused from a protest standpoint in this country.
We're discussing critical race theory and the Derek Chauvin sentencing that just took place over the weekend. But we're also talking about Juneteenth and the history, the accurate history, and the necessity for history to be told accurately and archived. Georgia, I appreciate the way you framed it, because that's what's happening with the media. They are the official archivers. And if they are archiving it through their lens, then our future is doomed to be the interpretation of people who don't look like us and don't have the same fights and struggles as us. And that includes a conversation on Juneteenth. I am excited to be joined by Seattle Council member Kshama Sawant. She has been a member of the Seattle City Council since 2016, a member of the Socialist Alternative and Democratic Socialists of America. Councilmember Sawant was the first socialist to win an election in Seattle since 1916. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. How are you?
I'm good, and thank you so much for having me.
The pleasure is ours. I want to begin with the attacks that are occurring on you in Seattle, specifically to recall you. And to me and everyone who's looking, it looks like it's a direct attack based on your efforts fighting for working people for the $15 an hour. Could you just kind of help us understand the nature of this recall effort?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it all connects back to how, as you mentioned, Ben, we won our first election in 2013, in the fall of 2013. And since then, we have won 2 re-elections. We won the historic $15 an hour minimum wage. We made Seattle the first major city to win the $15 minimum wage. Then just last summer, during the thick of the Black Lives Matter street protests, we won the historic Amazon tax, which is a tax to fund affordable housing and Green New Deal projects and Green New Deal jobs by taxing the largest corporations in Seattle, like Amazon, but not limited to Amazon. And then we have won a whole fleet of renters' rights victories that were thought of as impossible. And truly, having one socialist city council office that is truly rooted in the movement and is used, this office is being used by me and by others who work with me as an organ for working class struggle. It has won victories, not only that were thought of as impossible, but it has completely transformed Seattle's political landscape. We have forced the Democratic Party establishment that controls the city to reckon with working class politics. So it's no surprise that in the 7.5 years that we've been on the city council, they have thrown every possible attack against us. There's been lawsuit after lawsuit and numerous so-called ethics complaints, and I've lost count of those complaints and lawsuits. There were even some ethics complaints against us because we used the City Hall printer and copier to print leaflets and posters to build our movement, which we do proudly. We don't apologize for it. But the point is that they have tried all kinds of attacks. The Amazon spent more than $1 million to try and defeat our re-election in 2019. None of that worked. So now they have this recall campaign against us. The recall campaign has 4 charges. All of them are completely false charges. They claim that we broke the law, that I broke the law, but we didn't break the law. In reality, it is a retaliation against working people actually feeling empowered, not just to fight back, but having the temerity to win victories that go in the face of corporate domination. And so, it's no surprise that there's this attack against us. It is also part of the attack against the nationwide Black Lives Matter movement, because 2 of the 4 charges against me are because of my involvement in the Black Lives Matter movement here.
And it's just so much there for us to unpack. But what stood out to me is the fact that Amazon itself literally spent $1 million to try to defeat you. And when that didn't work, now you're fighting against all of these headwinds from people who are, for lack of a better phrase, nitpicking every little thing that you do in order to justify getting rid of you. And it's not, in most cases, when we do these analysis, especially in like mainstream media or even sometimes in independent media, we talk about this being an assault from conservatives. But as I'm listening to you, this is not, you're not just getting attacked from the right, you're getting attacked from people who like to claim to be the party of working people. You're getting attacked by some Democrats. Could you unpack that a little for me?
That's a very important point, Ben, and a lot of what's happening here also connects to what's happening in Washington, D.C., and why the $15 an hour minimum wage didn't really see the light of day and hasn't seen the light of day so far, and what would it take to see to actually come to fruition. I mean, if you look at the recall campaign donors, I mean, many of them are right-wing people, but if you look at the billionaires who are donating to this campaign, many of them have donated both to Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And Seattle as a city is controlled, as I said, by the Democratic Party establishment. For as long as I have known, the mayor has been a Democrat and all of the council members are Democrats, except when I got first got elected, then we had one socialist, one working class representative in City Hall. And so not only do we see the Democratic establishment really behind this recall campaign as well, but when we ran for re-election in 2019, for example, in the primary election, two of the Latina progressive Democrats on the city council ran a candidate against me, saying that they agreed with the policies that I was pushing for. They just did not like me, and they don't think that I have good relationships. This is the kind of rhetoric that we see whenever working people will start fighting back, and so we have to refuse to accept that. And we have to hold politicians accountable. And of course, there are clear differences between the Republican Party and especially the reactionary elements like Trump. And it was an important repudiation of Trump's reactionary agenda that the majority of working people voted him out. But at the same time, we can see, for example, when there were millions of people demanding $15 an hour, it was the Democrats in the White House, the Democrats in Congress that were an obstacle to it. And so I think if you look at how we won $15 an hour in Seattle, for example, we won $15 an hour precisely because we didn't use that kind of relationship insider deal strategy. We turned outwards. We used my office to build the 15 Now movement, which then went nationwide actually and won $15 victories in other cities like Minneapolis as well. But what we did was we used our office to build a fighting strategy, empowering ordinary people and workers. And I'll just mention what 15 Now in my office with our socialist fighting strategy, what we overcame was not only the opposition of big business and the overtly corporate Democrats, we also overcame the cautious instincts of the well-meaning progressive Democrats and the well-meaning labor leaders who don't want to go into conflict with big business.
I think that's so critical, like the timidness and the reluctance of people who actually agree with us on policy not being willing to fight head on in these fights. But if they take a look at what's happening to you, I guess that's why they're afraid, because they know that as soon as they challenge this corporate structure that has us stranglehold across the country, that all of those forces come down to bear. I want to ask you about the fight for labor across the country too, and I want to kind of juxtapose it to the lie that 15 an hour was going to hurt Seattle, and I know that now we have enough evidence to suggest otherwise, but then also with the fight across the country, the standard talking point is that if we raise the minimum wage to 15 an hour, then the price of our hamburger is going to go up and it's going to cause inflation across the country. Could you talk about the actual data that has come out of Seattle since you all won 15 an hour?
Well, absolutely. the data shows without any doubt that $15 an hour has not had any detrimental impact on the on the Seattle economy. What has happened now, of course, is the COVID pandemic and the recession that is rooted in the crisis of the capitalist system itself. So it's not like $15 an hour has caused any damage. And to go to your earlier discussion, taxes on the rich has never destroyed the economy. What is destroying people's lives, the lives of the majority under capitalism, is capitalism itself, because capitalism as a system, is not geared. I mean, it's not meant. The goal of capitalism is not to improve living standards for everybody, to employ the technology and the creativity to make sure everybody has what they need. The goal of capitalism is to maximize profits for the wealthy by exploiting workers. And that means they also use racism and sexism, those kinds of specific oppressions, also to make sure that they keep the working class, in a state of repression as a whole. And so $15 an hour and the Amazon tax, they represent reforms under capitalism that are wrested out of the hands of big business and the Democratic and Republican establishments, despite their unwillingness to concede. And what we see from the data, not only now after $15 an hour has taken effect in Seattle, but even before that, it was very clear that what the economic evidence showed was that there was not going to have any detrimental impact. There was not going to be any business that was going to close, and there was not going to be any economic apocalypse, which, everything was claimed. None of those claims had any basis in reality to begin with, but also now we have the proof that it doesn't work. I'll tell you one thing, though, that even if there was any truth, that this economy, this model of economy, capitalism, was so fragile that it could not withstand ordinary people, the workers who create the profits for the billionaires, that they could have even a modicum of living standards. $15 an hour is far from what is needed, actually, to meet people's daily requirements. But if the system is so fragile that it cannot withstand that, then it's an argument against the system itself. It's not an argument against $15 an hour. And that's why I'm a socialist, because I don't believe that, as hard as it will be to win reforms, even like $15 an hour, let alone Medicare for all, that's not going to be enough. We need a real overhaul of the society itself, because it's not working for most of us.
Whew. My God. Wow. Thank you so much for everything that you're saying. I have more questions, but I'm just absorbing everything that you're saying, and the passion with which you speak and the conviction with which you speak is so refreshing to hear, especially from somebody who's been in power and because of what you fight for, you have become a target. Let's go to Bessemer, Alabama, where there's a fight for unions to unionize Amazon, and the amount of corporate power that is brought down to bear against these unionizing efforts, to me, is a joke. It's a joke in terms of our democracy, because they're allowed to do these things in the first place. But show us how it's connected, right? The fight for 15 across the country versus the fight to unionize there in Bessemer, Alabama.
Absolutely. I mean, the union struggle in Bessemer, Alabama is absolutely crucial right now. In fact, it is important to note that if there is a victory for the union there, for the workers there, it will be nothing short of a game changer for the labor movement and for worker struggles as a whole in the United States, given this unprecedented moment of crisis that we are in. And you can see the lengths to which the Amazon Corporation, the executives, the billionaires, not just Jeff Bezos, but the new CEO and everyone else that controls that corporation, the lengths that they are going to try and defeat this union struggle, the lies that the workers are relentlessly confronted with. The workers are telling us they cannot even walk from their workstation to the bathroom without seeing a number of anti-union messages pasted on the walls. The corporation is spending $10,000 a day, or maybe upwards of that, with these anti-union union consultants. So you can see that, it is similar. The attacks against unionizing efforts are similar to when the labor movement was first beginning over 100 years ago, when the capitalist class employed very, very brutal measures to try and prevent the labor movement. The labor movement happened in any way. And I think the courage and the political clarity that it will take to really build these kinds of union struggles is similar to the kind of clarity we have needed to withstand attacks from corporations here in Seattle as well. So the point is that the way in which we have refused to become part of the establishment and use our office as a way to build working class struggles, like turning outwards and not relying on the goodwill of the Democrats on the council, that is the kind of political courage that we will need on the part of labor leaders as well. In fact, a few years ago, the teachers in West Virginia, they won a historic victory precisely because they had the courage and the understanding that they should reject the deal that was made by the higher up union leaders, the state level union leaders with the Republican legislature. The rank and file union leaders there, they rejected that deal. They continued their strike action, and that's how they won the historic victory. I mean, this is Joe Manchin's state, right? So it shows you the potential that we can, of what we can win, and the potential of turning around this nation through just a historic labor movement around the country. But that is not going to happen unless we have leaders who understand that there is no way of making those gains possible without yourselves becoming targets of the corporate establishment and the ruling class, because they are not on your side. The interests of the capitalist class that these politicians represent and that the Democratic Party unfortunately represents are never going to be aligned with the interests of the working class. These are diametrically opposed to one another. And so you cannot rely, to fight for the working class, you cannot rely on the party that represents the opposite class, the ruling class, the capitalist class. And the potential for uniting Black, white, Latino, immigrant workers is tremendous, but we need that kind of fighting struggle.
And absolutely, I mean, just hearing your voice on this issue just is the type of fire that's necessary to push us in that direction. I just want to ask you one last question. One of the number one things that I get pushback on is when I identify as a Black socialist, as a socialist in general, for the very reasons that you've outlined here. But then I listen to what's happening to you on the Seattle Council, City Council, and it's like, to me, that fight represents what we should be fighting in this country. And this is what I mean. There are Democrats on that council who have made themselves an enemy of the people in attacking you. And then there you are representing the left, representing working people. To me, that's the spectrum that we need to be fighting on. But instead, not only are we fighting corporate Democrats, we're fighting fascistic Republicans. We have this insanely wide range in the discourse here in this country. And for so long, it never included people like voices like yours, because we were relegated to the dregs of society. We were McCarthyism chased us away. They try to vilify anyone who identified with anything other than this pure capitalistic system. My question to you is why do you feel it's necessary to identify as a socialist for people who are still afraid to identify that way when none of us got capital? Like, why is somebody calling themselves a capitalist when they don't have any capital? Could you speak to that?
I think that's very important, and it's interesting. The kind of period that we're in is so remarkably different from the period that many of our parents' generations were in, the Cold War era, where there was all this vilification of the ideas of socialism, and a lot of it was demonized. I think obviously we have a lot of work to do, as you were saying, Ben. I totally agree with you. We have a lot of work in clarifying what socialism means, and I want to do that in a second. But I think it's also important to recognize recognize that the younger generations, millions of young people actually haven't grown up under the shadow of the Cold War. What they are, I mean, they may not understand what socialism is. Some of them may even have some ideas of hostility towards it. But predominantly what I see around us in the nation is a lot of curiosity about socialism, increased support for socialist ideas. But what's the bottom line here? The bottom line is that tens of millions of Americans are crystal clear what we have right now, that's not working for us, So we want a different kind of society. And so, in fact, the Black Lives Matter street protest, which ended up becoming the largest street protest movement ever in U.S. history, with 26 million people out on the streets in a multiracial working class solidarity against racism and police violence. I mean, that was not only an expression against oppression, it captured the overall anger that people are feeling about the way the system works. In the middle of the pandemic, you are seeing American billionaires becoming over $1 trillion richer. And not one single police officer who has murdered a black or brown person has faced justice. So, that people are understanding that this lopsided system does not work for us. We need something different. And it's no coincidence that my organization, Socialist Alternative, and especially Democratic Socialists of America, we have grown in leaps and bounds because so many people are searching for answers. And what I mean by socialism, of course, is a society that is able to harness the tremendous productivity, technological achievements, natural resources, and wealth of our society to guarantee a high standard of living for all living beings, all human beings, in an environmentally sustainable way. That's what socialism means. But it's just an abstract idea unless we actually fight for it. And the starting point of it has to be taking the commanding heights of the economy, the largest corporations like Amazon, the energy corporations in Texas that cause such suffering to 4 million people, the fossil fuel companies. We need to take these companies into democratic public ownership by workers so that we can end the use of fossil fuels. We can actually usher in a real climate justice era, which we need to do because the ecological clock is ticking. But none of this is possible unless the working class, unless ordinary people, we get organized ourselves and unite against racism, against sexual violence, against the exploitation of workers. We need a real root and branch revival of the labor movement where we have genuine democracy inside the unions and we don't have business union leaders making deals with big business bosses. We need workers to fight for our own needs.
Whew. Seattle Council Member Kshama Sawant, thank you so much for your fight and everything that you're doing. How can people support you during this recall effort to remove you? Where should they go?
Thank you so much for asking that, because the left nationally and everybody who considers themselves progressive, who wants to defeat the conservative forces, who wants to defeat the billionaire class, has a stake in this fight and has a stake in defeating this recall. So please go to kshamasolidarity.org, which is Kshama, my first name, KSHAMA, solidarity, all one word, .org. It doesn't matter where you live in the United States. We need your help, first of all, starting with working class donations, because obviously our campaign is not funded by billionaires. The campaign against us is funded by the billionaire class. Yes. So we depend on working class donations. We depend on working class solidarity. And we know that this is what's at stake. If we are able to defeat this recall, then it will send a tremendous surge of confidence for working people everywhere that we can defeat Amazon, we can defeat the establishment. But if we don't defeat them, if the recall wins against us, then I have no doubt that they will use that as a template to go after other socialists, other labor activists, even media people who are actually on the left. So we have to remember that we are in this together, because those attacks are not against an individual. Those attacks are against the movement and the mood of revolt that is developing in this nation.
Seattle Council Member Kshama Sawant, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to introduce someone to you. Her name is Georgia Ford. She is a 2-time Emmy-nominated journalist. She has been published on CNN, ABC, NBC, Fox, CBS affiliates. Her mission as a storyteller is to change the narrative by amplifying truth, citing diverse sources, and contextualizing social justice issues. Georgia Ford, part of her story, this is just a part of it, lost her job in journalism after 10 years because she got pregnant, and her job was able to legally fire her for becoming pregnant. Georgia, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely, our pleasure. As I was saying in the green room, I came to know your work because of the advertising that I saw you on Facebook and on Instagram. And I was like, okay, because, I recognize the individual effort, the independent media work that you're doing, and that you believe in your work enough to actually put yourself out there, to put your name out there, to put your brand out there, to put your reputation out there. Tell us about where you are in terms of your work and your activism, your journalism, and everything that you're working on now.
Absolutely. Well, as you said, I was a mainstream anchor. I was, on in the morning, on in the afternoon, anchoring newscasts. And when I was not given maternity leave, it really made me pivot. And so I found myself in a place where I was asking myself, what am I going to do? And so, I did kind of reach out in my hometown and try to get hired. But as people know, in Minnesota, people saw, the world saw with George Floyd, there's a lot of systematic racism here. And so for one reason or another, I was not hired in this market, but that did not deter me from telling our stories. I just eventually came to this epiphany that I don't need to be affiliated with a network to get out here and amplify voices in our community. And so I just unapologetically started doing what it is that I do best. And, the community has received that. Even individuals outside of this market have received that. And I think, because we are in a climate where so many people are criticizing fake news, criticizing media for being biased or leaning left or leaning right, there is this huge desire for independent voices. And so it is a great time to be an independent journalist. And the last thing I'll add is, I love my curly hair, but when I was in mainstream media, I couldn't wear my hair like this. Oftentimes when we see Black women on TV, their hair is straight, and that becomes a part of their contract. So, one day I did come to work curly because I had some things come up, flat tire, the unexpected happened, and I just didn't have time to straighten it. And I actually got in trouble. I got pulled into office by my superior, who told me I didn't have permission to wear my hair like this. And if I did it again, then I would be written up.
It's very interesting that you talk about that because, Georgia, I have the same exact story. It's funny because when I first got out of, graduating from the #1 HBCU in the nation, FAMU, but when I first got out of school, I literally was told I used to wear my hair straight. I couldn't wear my nails a certain kind of way. That's the only way that they would hire me. In these mainstream media places. And then I felt like my voice was taken from me. I couldn't really speak on certain issues because it would come off in a way that was biased, right? And we're supposed to be unbiased. But how can I, as a Black woman, not discuss this issue happening to Black women in a way that people can relate to? And then when I went off and separated and got into this politics world, I was able to use my voice a little bit more. But even in that world, it was in independent media as well. It was almost structured where they wanted me to just discuss Trump and not Colin Kaepernick. And then I had to make sure I got to push that to the side. I had to sacrifice as well. So hearing your story, it's so funny because your story is my story and a lot of other Black and brown girls' story when it comes to mainstream media. When you're working as an independent journalist, and kudos to you, you're doing a really, really good job. Really good job. But now you're working as an independent journalist. How does it feel? What's the difference? Were you able to do the stories that you wanted to do in mainstream media? Like when you pitched them, when they had something to do with race or social issues? How was your voice different from the mainstream media to you now being an independent world?
Yeah, when I was in mainstream media, there definitely were challenges. I definitely had times where I felt like my voice was being silenced. And an example of that, I was covering an officer-involved shooting. In this incident, the man actually didn't die. He was injured and arrested. And so, number one, you can't refer to him as a victim, which I didn't agree with, but that is the way that they wanted to present the story. And when you talk about narrative and the impact that that has, by not being able to call someone who has been shot a victim, removes a sense of empathy already from the story. In addition to that, I was immediately instructed to go and find that man's criminal history. And so when you're in media, you do want to be balanced, you do want to be unbiased. So I said, okay, if that's my assignment, if that's what I have to do, I'm also going to go and find the complaints that have been filed against that officer. There were 12 pages of complaints. 4 of them were racial profiling specifically. I had a Black officer who was on the force who pulled me aside when nobody was looking, shook my hand and thanked me for telling this story. I had a veteran who had been on the force and worked with that guy previously, who, also reached out and said, yeah, this guy is racist. And so, in addition to that, they didn't even let me put that in the report. And so I couldn't understand how you want me to go ahead and tell this guy's criminal history. And here we have all of this evidence that has been vetted and backed by so many sources that this cop is racist, but we can't include that. And the reason why, and I went to bat to include that information, but the reason why that was never included was because they said they didn't want to piss off the police department, because they depend on them for so much of their information. Yeah. And so that is a very clear example. And I'm not saying that all newsrooms are like that, but that is a very extreme example of how mainstream media can become to be one-sided. And so as an independent journalist, I absolutely have the autonomy, the freedom, the liberty to go ahead and publish that information because it's facts. However, I will say, as an independent journalist, the challenge that you face now is getting the other side. So community, a lot of times, trust me to tell the community side, but I'm still a journalist. I still do want to be balanced and fair. So now when I'm reaching out to government agencies or I'm reaching out to police entities to try to get that other side, they're not as quick to talk to me because I don't have the following that these legacy media has. Luckily, I do have a network here in this community. And so I have had some success with that here locally, but abroad, it is a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I'm thinking about all the different ways that your story is actually replicated across this country. Like Rebecca's shared a piece of hers, and I'm thinking of just the number of Black journalists that I've seen go through that exact thing. My question for you is in terms of the platform that you're building, because you're working on something, you're building something, and that's what, that's really what caught my eye in the first place, is that you're out here building something. What are you building? Are you releasing your content as individual clips? Are you doing what are some of the goals? Because there's a lot of alignment, and I want to make sure that people who are watching us now, especially the Pride and the chat rooms, all the people who support us, can know where and how and what to expect when they start consuming media from Georgia Forward.
Absolutely. So independently on my platforms, I am currently focused on building my audience and telling authentic stories. And so, the other piece to that is making it sustainable. I am a mother. I do have a family. And so it's challenging. I think the other piece to being independent is, how do you fund this? Because I don't get a paycheck every 2 weeks. And so when you talked about, like covering social justice issues and how does that impact you, a lot of people don't know. Yeah, you can throw your Cash App out there, your Venmo out there. Some people respond to that. But like these platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they all have, and even YouTube, they all have different structures to monetize. So there is a way that you can sustain. However, it is even that much more challenging for someone like me to make this work sustainable, because advertisers do not want to put their ads in videos that are discussing addressing social justice issues.
That's
so
it.
for
Yeah,
me,
girl,
I'm losing out on, ad dollars because I'm not doing beauty tutorials. I'm losing out on ad dollars because I'm not doing DIY videos or mommy videos. And those are all great and they all have their place, in our society. However, I do believe that news that amplifies the Black experience also has a place. And so what I have identified in terms of making this work sustainable is it's really going to take the community to get behind it. And so I'm not very aggressive about saying, subscribe, become a supporter, Cash App, Venmo, but that is truly the only way that I'll be able to continue to do this work. So when you come and you follow Georgia Forward, what you can expect is maybe not, the 5 o'clock news every day. I'm not in a position where I can produce stories every single day. But what you can expect is when I do produce a story is that it has been well thought out. It's done in quality. I have fact checked. I have reached out. I'm doing exclusive interviews, enterprise interviews. And 9 times out of 10, these are stories that you're not going to find in mainstream media. One of the last stories I did published some footage of a police officer joking with an unarmed Black man about a murder in progress. And it was disgusting and it was disheartening to hear that type of sentiment just made light of. And the young man who this happened to actually did an interview with me and he said it very well. He said, "This is a mockery of all the Black people who have been killed by police." And there has been no discipline for that officer. And to me, actions, they do start out as words. And so if police in the state of Minnesota, after seeing what happened to George Floyd, are not going to crack down and put their foot on these officers' necks when they're out of line, we're going to continue to have more George Floyds in this country. And so that actually, even after putting that story out there, it did force the Brooklyn Park Police Department to issue a statement about it. But mainstream media never picked that story up. And if you ask me, I do think even still today that is a very important story that needs to be discussed as we're approaching the George Floyd trial in 14 days. Outside of that, more recently, I have been doing a lot of coverage around like the homeless encampments, the evictions. When you turn on mainstream media, you hear the mayor talking about their plan to, attack homelessness. You hear the governor, you hear all of these government officials, but how often are you seeing mainstream media go out to where these tents are and talking to those people themselves and verifying the information? Because the mayor and the city officials, they make it sound great. Oh, we're offering all of these things. We're giving them a room. We're giving them this. We're doing all of these things. But that is not the same narrative that you hear from the people who are actually homeless and in Minnesota living in below zero temperatures. And so I have done extensive coverage on that is not seen anywhere else. So that is what you can expect when you follow me. And last thing, I'll wrap this up quick, is I just launched my company, Black Press. And so I do identify that our community is not a monolith. I don't think that I can tell all of our stories by myself. And so Black Press will be a community for other independent journalists to find resources, to be compensated, to find the tools and the information that they need to grow their platforms. So simultaneously, while I'm building out my platform, I want to take all the knowledge and the resources that I'm finding that are helping me and share that with other independent journalists. Wow. And then also create it as a platform so that people who are in search of diverse voices can come and find stories even beyond just the ones I'm reporting.
Wow.
Georgia, that is amazing. Your whole story, like I said, is something that we all share. Black women who have come from mainstream media, who've had to walk away from it, not by choice sometimes, but we had to make a way for ourselves. And to fund that, it's been difficult, even in this space right now, with me being on this show and us being blessed to bring you on this show. And then you being able to go independent, but also create Black Press to allow other voices, because you understand that Black voices is not a monolith. Like you said, it's just not one way. And we can't tell all the stories. There are other people who it's their niche in those areas where they can tell those stories. And I'm very grateful for you doing what you do in this space. And you are a mommy, you can do it all. To whoever who had you before, they lost a really, really good thing, but they don't even know the power that you have now, but what you are about to be. So congratulations to you on that. everybody, and you said that was like blackpress.com. Was that what it was?
BLCK, blackpress.com. Yeah.
Make sure you guys get to
that. I appreciate that very much.
You're welcome. And make sure you follow her. And where can they follow you?
At Georgia4, at by Georgia4 on all social media platforms, or you can just go to my website, georgia4.com.
Georgia4.com. And everybody, I'm assuming you have a YouTube page as well. And so if we can, one of the producers, would you grab a link to her YouTube page? I want to make sure that we post it in the chat room before the end of today's episode. Everybody go over there and subscribe to Georgia For It. And we'd love to have you back. If you ever have any story that needs to be amplified, we'll be more than happy to use our platform because we got to squad up in this independent media space, but more specifically, this Black independent media space. We all need each other. So anything we can help along the way, just let us know.
We got you, girl.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. You all have a wonderful day.
You too. You too.
A Black officer decided to speak on the insurrection. So Harry Dunn, a Capitol Police who was there on January 6th, gave an interview to ABC News detailing his experience of that day. The interview aired Monday morning on Good Morning America. Dunn is a 13-year veteran in the U.S. Capitol Police Department. Speaking only for himself and not the department, Dunn is the first U.S. Capitol Police officer. Of course, he's going to be a Black man ready to speak. But Dunn is the first U.S. Capitol Police officer to speak publicly about the events of January 6th. Take a look.
You just see a sea of people, Trump flags, Confederate flags, thin blue line flags, don't tread on me flags. And then you look down and you see officers fighting with these people who were prepared. They had on gas masks, they had on body armor, they had on two-way radios, they had on tactical gear, bulletproof vests. I was absolutely scared. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'7". I'm this giant person. And I'm thinking, I'm gonna get shot. They're gonna take me out. I said, we got dozens of officers down. And you got the nerve to be holding a Blue Lives Matter flag. And as one of the guys kept walking by, the other one pulled out his badge and said, trust me, I understand. We're doing this for you, buddy. You gotta be kidding me. I literally told them, if they want to get through here, you got to go through me. They were saying how Joe Biden did not win the election. Nobody voted for him. Okay, what about me? I voted for Joe Biden. Does my vote not count?
This is when Officer Dunn encountered a couple in the crowd who began hurling the most vile of racial slurs at him.
He said, hey, this voted for Joe Biden, guys. Hey, everybody, this voted for Joe Biden. They said, you.
So the crowd joined in?
Everybody joined in with him. There was a large number of people in that crowd that were racist. We're stopping the steal. According to them, they were doing it for us. According to those terrorists, it wasn't just a mob or a bunch of thugs, you know? They were terrorists. They tried to disrupt this country's democracy. That was their goal. And you know what? Y'all failed. So I said, is this America? What the hell just happened? They beat police officers with Blue Lives Matter flags. They had Confederate flags in the U.S. Capitol. They stormed the Speaker's office. They were trying to assassinate the Vice President in the Capitol. There were dozens of Eugene Goodmans that day. He deserves everything that he's getting. But there were so many Eugene Goodmans that weren't caught on camera that day. And I'm proud to work with them.
Wow.
So I'm glad that he told his story. Harry Dunn, you are a Eugene Goodman. Yeah, your story wasn't told that day, but the fact that you're able to explain and talk about your story. I know we highlighted Eugene Goodman with good reason. Right. Even though he wore that blue line, that thin blue line mask, that's okay. That's okay too. He still saved. He still did the work. That Black man did the work. Yeah. But Harry Dunn, your account of the whole thing, a whole 6'7" man.
I knew that was going to catch your attention.
6'7", but you're 6'7".
Bring me back on the screen, because I knew it. I knew when he said 6'7", I just knew that was going to resonate in somebody's mind on this show.
It resonated in mine, goddamn it! I ain't gonna lie
to you. It shot up in my spirit. It shot up in my spirit. It sizzled right there. But no, this whole 6'7" man. No, seriously, y'all.
This man got a whole foot on me. My God, that's a man. That's a
but this whole man, this 6'7" man who is a Capitol Police officer, thought that he was gonna die. Was called the N-word by these terrorists. And he says what I say every day on this show when we're talking about the terrorist attack. These are not just the beautiful name to me, because when you say insurrectionists, people don't really know or understand. It just sounds so polished to me. These people are terrorists. White folks in America understand terrorists because they automatically associate them with people who are Middle Eastern, right? Who are Muslim. Yes. So now it's hard for them to look at themselves in the mirror and call them terrorists. You guys are terrorists. You are terrorists to Harry Dunn, the Capitol Police officer who's there to protect. And all of a sudden, y'all coming in. Harry Dunn understood or didn't know. He wasn't in on what the other Capitol Police officers who were allowing these people to come. He was looking like, where is my help? Why am I think I'm going to die right now. Where are my people? Where is my protection? Where is my crew? Right? And they left him for dead because they were assisting these terrorists. And these other police officers who allowed it and were complicit are domestic terrorists as well. This is what we're looking at. And hearing the account coming from the police officer himself is chilling, right? We've heard it from the Congress people who were in there, everybody who, was working there. We've heard it from the other side of people who are on the outside. But listening to it from a police officer, it's a different story. That man thought he wasn't going to make it that day.
And the crazy thing about it, the wild thing about this whole situation is that you still have this disingenuous effort, right? They are doing their very best to try to rewrite what the 6th was about. When I say they, I mean conservatives. They're literally convincing their supporters that it had nothing to do with Donald Trump. Meanwhile, the idea of whether or not it had something to do with Donald Trump is dividing the Republican Party. And we see, there was a stat that came out, 46% of Republicans would leave the Republican Party in order to support Donald Trump. And so while they're trying to do two things at one time, they're trying to convince America that what Officer Dunn went through was not connected to Trump. On the same side of on the opposite side of the token, rather, you have those people who said it was not enough.
Black boy joy, she wanna see the Forbes like I wanna see her form. Tell me what you for, yeah. Hey, you pay me what I'm owed, yeah. Yeah, all this money on me.